Chapter 963. What was that sound just now? In the special grade chef test room, many people were dumbfounded, looking around in bewilderment. The sound that had just echoed was ear-piercing, like a thunderbolt that shook people's souls. It was somewhat similar to the sound of the legendary lightning punishment. But how could there be the sound of the lightning punishment? They were in the special grade chef test room, not the heaven chief test room. How could there be the sound of the lightning punishment? Everyone's gaze landed on Bufong, who was standing in the middle of the square. The porcelain jar of Buddha jumps over the wall soup glowed, and the Buddha smiled, emitting a dazzling golden radiance. However, that wasn't the point. The three judges had already stood up from their seats. They cocked their heads to listen, and soon they heard the sound of the lightning punishment in the sky. Lightning punishment. Is it the lightning punishment from the heaven chief test next door? The female judge, whose fingernails were painted red, pressed her fingers on her red lips, her face shocked. No, how could it be so coincidental? Could it be that the heaven chief's dish and that mortal's dish would be born at the same time? Perhaps that's possible. Otherwise, how could it be explained? The judges started to argue. However, no matter what, the appearance of the lightning punishment shouldn't be a bad thing. In the audience stands, Mu Luer's mouth was wide open, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Lightning punishment? The special grade chef test has a lightning punishment? Is it caused by the heaven chief test next door? Mu Luer thought. Perhaps this was the only explanation. The heaven chief test was taking place next door, so when this happened, the shock in people's hearts faded a little. The audience's shocked faces slowly disappeared. I told you. How could a mortal cook a dish that could trigger the lightning punishment? Only the heaven chief can trigger the lightning punishment. If his dish can condense immortal energy, it means he's already the heaven chief. Don't be ridiculous. A mortal can't become the heaven chief. The audience was discussing. Some were surprised, and some were sneering. However, at least they had reached a consensus. That was, the one who triggered the lightning punishment was not Bufong, but the neighboring heaven chief. Bufong raised his head slightly and raised his eyebrows. He did not expect to trigger the thunder tribulation. Using better ingredients to cook the Buddha jumps over the wall would indeed improve the quality of the dish. Bufong exhaled softly. He didn't move. Since there was a lightning punishment, he naturally had to endure it to make this dish perfect. As for the expressions and moods of the people around him, he couldn't be bothered. The purpose of his assessment was to obtain the qualification to open a shop. However, he did not understand why the people around him were sneering at him. At this moment, the aroma of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was enough to make one intoxicated. Could it be that these people weren't attracted by the aroma? Little fellow, this dish of yours should be done, right? What's it called? Buddha jumps over the wall? Hurry up and serve them, the judge said. However, to his surprise, Bufong looked at him indifferently and shook his head. Wait a minute. It's not done yet. I need to prepare my emotions. Prepare his emotions. The people around didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Did a dish need to prepare his emotions? However, right at this moment, the room's door was opened. Squeak. The door of the special grade chef assessment was pushed open. That sound was so obvious that it made the people in the room turn their eyes to the two people who had just stepped into the room. When they saw those two people, they were bewildered. It's Tong Chung, the heaven chief. Why is he here? Tong Chung, the heaven chief. Who's the one standing next to him? He looks familiar. It's Xianyuan Xiaohui, the one who's taking the heaven chief assessment next door. Damn it. I think we've made a mistake. What the F*** CK? The one taking the heaven chief assessment, Xianyuan Xiaohui? Why is he here? Has he finished the assessment? Then, what's the matter with the lightning punishment? Oh my God. The audience began to discuss again. The more they discussed, the more they found something unbelievable. Their faces looked as if they had seen a ghost. Since the lightning punishment had sounded, Mu Luer's mouth hadn't closed. She had thought that the lightning punishment was triggered by Xianyuan Xiaohui, but now, it didn't seem to be the case. That was because Xianyuan Xiaohui had come to the special grade chef assessment room. It meant the dish that triggered the lightning punishment wasn't cooked by Xianyuan Xiaohui. No one was taking the Heaven Chief assessment anymore. Now, only Bufang was cooking. The time and place all made sense. Phew, it's really awesome. Mu Luer took a deep breath, not knowing if she should cry or laugh. She didn't expect that Bufang would give her such a big surprise. The stove emitted a silver halo, and the aroma of the dish filled the entire place. Finally, the lightning punishment came. Was Bufang taking the special grade chef assessment or the Heaven Chief assessment? Rumble. Boom. Above the vault of heaven, the oppressive thunder rumbled once again. In the Heaven Chief assessment room, many aristocratic children were startled. How could there be the sound of lightning punishment? Wasn't the Heaven Chief assessment over? The lightning punishment was blocked, wasn't it? Wait a minute. That sound seemed to come from the room next door. The aristocratic children were all smart people. After a moment of bewilderment, they hurried to the special grade chef assessment room next door. Xianyuan Xian was still discussing with the aristocratic children, but all of a sudden, they left. This made Xianyuan Xian, who had prepared her speech, a little bewildered. Looking at the anxious faces of the aristocratic children as they left, she could only follow them. In the end, under the astonished eyes of the audience, the special grade chef assessment room was fully occupied. A dish that triggered the lightning punishment appeared in the special grade chef assessment room. Were all the special grade chefs that awesome? Bufang's mind moved, and the Buddha jumps over the wall. Soup hovered in front of him. The radiance of the Buddha jumps over the wall. Soup surged unceasingly. In the vault of heaven, the oppressive aura became thicker. Not good. This is the special grade chef assessment room. There's no lightning protection array here. That mortal has to resist the lightning punishment. How could a mortal resist the lightning punishment? He's going to be killed by the lightning punishment. The audience suddenly thought of something, and the room suddenly became noisy again. Tong Cheng's eyes narrowed. Finally, he saw Bufang, the chef with an earth immortal puppet that Tong Yu had reported to him. He dared to ignore the Tong family. Worthy of being Bufang, a special grade chef can trigger the lightning punishment. Xianyuan Xiaohui smiled, praising him. Brother Xianyuan, are you familiar with that chef? Tong Chung frowned, glancing at Tong Chung. Not really. I've seen Bufang cook a dish. Xianyuan Xiaohui told him the truth. So it was like that. The corners of Tong Cheng's mouth rose. They were just acquaintances. If he took Bufang, he wouldn't offend Xianyuan Xiaohui. Boom! While Tong Chung was pondering, suddenly, a rumbling sound came from the roof. Instantly, the roof exploded. No one had thought that a special grade chef could trigger the lightning punishment. That was why the special grade chef's roof didn't have a lightning protection array, and it was sealed. The roof exploded, and bricks and stones immediately fell from above. As the light shone, the audience looked up and saw the oppressive clouds outside. Lightning bolts were rolling and roaring in the clouds. There was a loud rumble. In the next moment, a light suddenly appeared in the clouds, and a rolling thunder dragon was faintly discernible. Then, with a rumble, the thunder dragon soared into the sky and charged toward Bufang. The audience was in an uproar. How could he stop it? How could a divine spirit realm cultivator who had ignited one divine flame resist that lightning dragon? It seemed that the chef was going to be killed by the lightning punishment. The aroma wafted in the air, and the dishes were about to be smashed. What a pity! In the audience, Mu Luer clenched her fists nervously. The corners of Tong Cheng's mouth rose as he watched Bufang get struck by the lightning punishment. However, shortly after, everybody was bewildered, because they found that Bufang didn't look surprised or afraid. That indifferent look. Why was that mortal so calm? Of course, Bufang had his reasons for being so calm. Lightning punishment. What Bufang wasn't afraid of the least was the lightning punishment. His mind flickered. In front of Bufang, specks of light appeared in the sky. Soon, the specks of light gathered and formed a mysterious array. The array sparkled. Light shot up into the sky, spinning. Then a giant, burly figure emerged. Sizzle, lightning arcs moved. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes shook. Then he raised his head, looking at the lightning punishment falling from the sky. A clanging sound echoed. A moment later, the metal wings on Xiao Bai's back spread open and lightning arcs shot out. Terrifying energy diffused from Xiao Bai's body. Then, Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes twinkled as he dashed toward the Thunder Dragon. The moment Xiao Bai appeared, many people paid attention to him. Tong Cheng was the first one to notice him. After all, he had studied many Earth Immortal puppets. The others also understood. No wonder that mortal was so calm. He had an Earth Immortal puppet to protect him. However, could an Earth Immortal puppet resist the lightning punishment? The audience was skeptical one more time. More importantly, how could a mortal have an Earth Immortal puppet, a high-end item? Xiao Bai soared up into the sky. His abdomen spun, and a black hole emerged. He grabbed a red war god stick with lightning sparkling on it. The war god stick pierced the sky, colliding with the lightning. The thunder dragon meandered, coiling around Xiao Bai in just a blink of an eye. Eventually, Xiao Bai turned into a lightning ball. Sizzle. Lightning arcs shot up into the sky. Everybody felt regretful. Indeed, the Earth Immortal puppet couldn't resist it. That mortal was about to be struck to death by the lightning. Tong Cheng couldn't help but sneer. Using an Earth Immortal puppet to resist the lightning punishment. That fellow was retarded. An Earth Immortal puppet couldn't resist lightning. As someone who had studied Earth Immortal puppets a lot, he knew the reason. Thus, he was waiting for that mortal's Earth Immortal puppet to explode. Then, that mortal would be struck to death by the lightning. However, after a long time, Bu Fong moved. Bu Fong didn't mind Xiao Bai, who was wrapped by the Thunder Dragon in the sky. Instead, he held the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, walking toward the three judges. Shortly, he arrived in front of the three judges. His mind flickered, and 3 blue and white porcelain bowls appeared on the judges' tables. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. At the same time, in the sky, a loud explosion echoed. The lightning ball was broken. Tens of thousands of lightning arcs scattered in the sky, and a suction force sucked them in. In front of everybody's incredulous eyes, Xiao Bai swallowed the lightning into his stomach. Down below, Bu Fong waved his hand and lifted the lid of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The smiling Buddha was revealed, and instantly, thousands of rays of golden light shot out from the porcelain jar beneath the Buddha. The light was dazzling, and the fragrance assailed everyone's nostrils. Chapter 964. The aroma of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup filled the entire place. Everybody couldn't help but twitch their noses, sniffing the aroma in the air. It was a very unique aroma, as if thousands of different flavors had been blended together. It was like silk, strands of silk. That dazzling radiance shot out from the porcelain jar. Everybody couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. That dish had dazzling light, and its aroma assailed their nostrils. Bu Fong's mental force burst out, and his spirit sea surged with earth-shaking waves. His mental force rippled, making the Buddha jumps over the wall soup float in the air like a small sun. The eyes of the surrounding people were all attracted. It was a dish that could trigger the lightning punishment. It should be noted that in the Heaven Chief test, if a dish could trigger the lightning punishment, it meant half of the success. And if the dish could condense immortal energy, it meant that the chef had passed the Heaven Chief test. Bu Fong's dish could trigger the lightning punishment, which meant that Bu Fong could directly become the Heaven Chief in this test. Oh my God! Thinking about this possibility, the audience took in a breath of cold air, their eyes filled with disbelief. Only this mortal from the lower realm could become the Heaven Chief in the special grade chef test. The 3 judges couldn't stand it anymore. As they sniffed the aroma in the air, their eyes sparkled. This aroma seems to have perfectly blended all the ingredients. His control of the heat isn't bad. No wonder it could trigger the lightning punishment. More than a dozen ingredients, and with the control of the heat, each flavor blends with each other. Unbelievable! This dish, perhaps it can really help you become an immortal chef. Are we going to witness the birth of a heaven chief in the special grade chef test? The three judges were shaken. They exchanged looks, seeing the shock and excitement in each other's eyes. Swish! Bufong scooped out ingredients from the porcelain jar. Demon frog meat, papillion dragon claws, and other ingredients were all scooped into the three judges' bowls. Then, he used his will to control the porcelain jar and poured out the golden soup. The three judges regained their composure. They sat in their seats, watching as Bufong scooped out the food from the porcelain jar. The surrounding audience couldn't help but stretch out their necks. Their eyes were filled with curiosity. They wanted to see if there was any immortal chi in the jar. If there was immortal chi, it meant that Bufong was already the Heaven Chief. Immortal had become the Heaven Chief. It was something that shocked the entire Heaven Chief realm. Xinyuan Xiaohui's eyes were also fixed on the porcelain jar. Her chest was heaving up and down violently, and her fists were tightly clenched. In the distance, the eyes of the disciples from the various clans also shone brightly. If this mortal could also become a Heaven Chief, he would definitely become a resource that was even more sought after than Xinyuan Xiaohui. After all, before Xinyuan Xiaohui became the Heaven Chief, he had already attached himself to an aristocratic family. If the other aristocratic families wanted to poach him, they would have to spend a lot of resources. However, Bufong was different. They had learned that Bufong was just a mortal who had just come to the Heaven Chief realm from the lower realm. Perhaps it was due to his innate talent that this mortal had the cooking skills of the Heaven Chief realm. As a mortal who didn't belong to any aristocratic family, if they could recruit him, the amount of resources they would have to spend would not even be half of what they would have to recruit Xinyuan Xiaohui. Swoosh! As soon as this thought popped up in their minds, the eyes of the disciples from the aristocratic families became more heated. Tong Chung narrowed his eyes. Different from the other disciples, his eyes were also filled with excitement. However, his excitement wasn't directed at Bufong. Instead, it was directed at the Earth Immortal puppet in the middle of the square, which had almost been ignored by everyone. It was a F*King Earth Immortal puppet that could swallow lightning punishments. As an Earth Immortal puppet lover, at this moment, Tong Chung felt as though countless claws were scratching his heart. He couldn't wait to catch the Earth Immortal puppet and study it. Why could this Earth Immortal puppet swallow lightning punishments? Lightning punishments carried the power of heaven and earth. Even the Heaven Chief didn't dare to use his body to resist them. Due to the limitations of the materials used, ordinary Earth Immortal puppets couldn't resist lightning punishments. They would disintegrate under the lightning punishments. Thus, he was so curious about Xiao Bai, who had swallowed lightning punishments in one bite. He stuck out his scarlet tongue, licking his lips. His eyes looked ferocious. He had to have this Earth Immortal puppet. Gasp! An uproar resounded, and this uproar was filled with regret and sighs. Many people in the audience felt dispirited. The three judges looked at the dish in the blue and white porcelain bowl, their eyes complicated. No immortal energy. Although the dish bloomed with dazzling gold light, it didn't have any immortal energy. Without immortal energy, it meant that this dish couldn't make Bufong the Heaven Chief. What a pity! The three judges let out a long sigh. They all felt that this was a little boring. The audience sighed again and again, feeling regretful. After feeling regretful, some of them looked at Bufong with disdain. A mortal is just a mortal. He thought he could counterattack and become the Heaven Chief. Turns out he just farts. What a pity! If he could become the Heaven Chief, this mortal would become the focus of the Heaven Chief's realm. Becoming a special grade chef isn't bad. No matter what, he's just a mortal from the lower realm. The audience discussed among themselves and revealed a look of emotion. The bright light in the eyes of the aristocratic family's juniors vanished. What remained was a faint disdain. That's right, disdain. As the aristocratic family's juniors, they were that realistic. If Bufong became the Heaven Chief, they would welcome him with smiles. However, Bufong didn't become the Heaven Chief, and his dishes didn't have immortal energy. Thus, he could only become a special grade chef. To the aristocratic families, a special grade chef was nothing. let alone a mortal's special grade chef. There was no need to rope him in. Xianyuan Xiaohui let out a long sigh. His eyes were filled with a complicated look, but there was also a hint of rejoicing. It seemed she felt lucky that Bufang didn't become the heaven chief. Although he was devoted to cooking, he wasn't stupid. He knew very well that if Bufang became the heaven chief, his value would be greatly reduced, and the resources he could get would be reduced. That wasn't what he wanted to see. Now that Bufang didn't become the heaven chief, he felt a little lucky. Xianyuan Xian stood with the other aristocratic family's juniors, squinting at Bufang. Just now, she was almost scared to death. Mu Luer rubbed her head, sighing regretfully. Still lacking a little. Although it was a pleasant surprise, it was still lacking a little. Heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall, soup. You're welcome to taste it, Bufang said calmly. He took a step back, indifferently looking at the three judges. The three judges glanced at Bufang, then calmly nodded. Since he didn't become the heaven chief, the three judges were disappointed, so their attitude toward Bufang wasn't good. The female judge, whose nails were painted bright red, grabbed the porcelain spoon. She raised her little finger, which made her look somewhat elegant. She scooped up a spoonful of golden soup. The soup was clear, and it didn't have any grease rings on it. Sizzle. Her red lips curled up, and a suction force appeared. The golden soup on the porcelain spoon was sucked into her mouth. Oh! In the next moment, the eyebrows of the judge twitched, and the expression on her face instantly changed. After drinking a mouthful of the soup, a sleek redness surged on her fair and pretty face. Faint steam gushed out from her mouth and nose. This smell, so fragrant, so rich. The female judge's body slightly tightened. She clamped her legs together, and her eyes revealed a look of disbelief. This soup seemed to have only one taste, but if one carefully tasted it, they would feel that there were thousands of flavors within that one taste. This was a very inconceivable feeling. When the other two judges saw the female judge's strange expression, their eyes brightened. They also started to taste the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The audience watched as the three judges drank a mouthful of soup. Their porcelain spoons couldn't stop moving, and they continuously scooped out the soup and poured it into their mouths. After drinking the soup, they used their chopsticks to pick up the ingredients in their bowls. In the bowl of the red-painted female judge was a papillion dragon claw. The papillion dragon claw was very big, but after being cooked, it became smaller and smaller, and the meat became smoother and smoother. The female judge licked the papillion dragon claw, and the soup on the dragon claw flowed through her tongue and into her mouth. Her entire body shivered, so fragrant. The female judge hummed through her nose. Then, she began to stuff the dragon claw into her mouth. The two judges next to her gawked and dropped their jaws. They swallowed their saliva, and their Adam's apple moved. The surrounding audience was also excited to see this. Eating a dish could be done like this. Crunch, crunch. All of a sudden, the female's eyes shot out bright light. Then, she fiercely closed her mouth, and the dragon claw was instantly bitten off. All the audience members who were paying attention to the female judge felt their hearts clench and their bodies shivered. The other two judges also began to taste the dish. The demon frog meat was smooth and tender, and the octopus meat was also very springy. There were those that flew in the sky, ran on the ground, and swam in the water. They had to admit that this dish was really shocking. It was a pity that it couldn't make Bufang the heaven chief. The three judges finished their dishes, wiping their mouths. Although the Buddha jumps over the wall soup didn't make Bufang the heaven chief, at least it wouldn't be a problem for him to become a special grade chef. Thus, the three judges announced that Bufang would become a special grade chef. This meant that Bufang had obtained the qualification to open a restaurant in Immortal City. Bufang narrowed his eyes, feeling a little excited. Now that he had obtained the qualification to open a restaurant, he was one step closer to completing the temporary task. In the room, the audience had begun to watch Bufang leave. He was just a special grade chef, so he couldn't attract their attention. If it weren't for the lightning punishment, they wouldn't have paid attention to Bufang. Xianyuan Xiaohui sighed. What a pity. Then, He turned to look at Tong Chung, who was sitting next to him. However, he was slightly bewildered. Young Master Tong Chung, you. Xianyuan Xiaohui furrowed her brows. Tong Chung turned to look at Xianyuan Xiaohui, a gentle smile on his face. Brother Xianyuan, I have a score to settle with that mortal. When I'm back, I'll have a good chat with Xianyuan Xiaohui. Tong Chung played with the jade bead in his hand as he said with a smile. Xianyuan Xiaohui's eyes shrank. With his sharp senses, he could sense a murderous aura in Tong Cheng's eyes. Tong Chung turned around, and the smile on his face disappeared instantly. Then, his face became indifferent. When he looked at Xiao Bai, there was a look of excitement on his face. He exerted some force in his hand, and the jade bead shattered. Tong Chung slowly walked toward Bufang. Bufang had finished his special grade chef test and achieved his goal. He didn't want to stay here any longer, so he turned around to leave. Now that he had obtained the qualification to open a restaurant, Bufang couldn't wait to open another branch. However, as soon as he turned around, a cold voice came from behind him. Mortal, stop right there. Leave your earth immortal puppet. I suspect that your earth immortal puppet is the one I lost in the lower realm. Chapter 965. Your earth immortal puppet looks like the one I lost in the lower realm. As soon as Tong Cheng said that, the noisy room quieted down. Those who were about to walk out of the room immediately pricked up their ears and looked in Bufang's direction. Their faces were filled with bewilderment and uncertainty. Xianyuan Xiaohui, who was standing not far from them, heard Tong Cheng's voice. His face changed. At this moment, many people's attention fell on the earth immortal puppet. Yeah, that earth immortal puppet doesn't look ordinary. Of course it's not ordinary. If it could resist the lightning punishment, how could it be ordinary? You're wrong. It didn't resist it. It swallowed the lightning punishment. The audience stopped in their tracks and stood where they were, whispering to each other as they discussed among themselves. The more they discussed, the more they found the earth immortal puppet incredible. Previously, their attention was attracted by the aroma of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, so they didn't pay attention to Xiao Bai's mysteriousness. However, they couldn't deny that an earth immortal puppet could resist the lightning punishment unscathed. It was enough to show how extraordinary it was. Young Master Tong Chung, Bufang, Xianyuan Xiaohui furrowed his brows. Although he and Bufang were just acquaintances, Tong Chung, who wanted to steal Bufang's earth immortal puppet, was bullying. Thus, he wanted to say something. However, Brother Xianyuan, don't say anything. I hate it when people interfere with my business. Tong Chung turned his head and looked at Xianyuan Xiaohui. He extended a finger to cover his mouth as he spoke in a soft voice. Xianyuan Xiaohui froze. Thinking about Tong Cheng's status, Xianyuan Xiaohui could only sigh. Although he had become the Heaven Chief, Tong Chung was also the Heaven Chief. Moreover, he was a descendant of an aristocratic family, so his status was much higher than his. Although he had some authority, he couldn't influence Tong Chung. Mu Luer wanted to come and congratulate Bufang, but she didn't expect that Tong Chung would show up. Tong Chung was a member of the Tong family. Did Tong Yu report something to him? That was possible. Thinking of Tong Yu's sharp and unkind face, Mu Luer suddenly felt that Bufang was in trouble. In the Immortal City, everybody knew that Tong Chung liked to play with earth immortal puppets. Now, that Bufang had mentioned an earth immortal puppet that could swallow lightning punishments. How could it not attract Tong Cheng's attention? Bufang stood where he was, while Xiao Bai stood beside Bufang. Its mechanical eyes flickered continuously, and there were electric arcs jumping on them. Tong Chung smirked, coldly looking at Bufang. Bufang was expressionless. After hearing Tong Cheng's words, they slowly turned their heads and looked at each other. What did you say? Bufang asked, his face still emotionless. I said, your earth immortal puppet is mine. Tong Chung smirked, raising a finger to point at Xiao Bai, who was standing beside Bufang. Bufang rolled his eyes. He didn't want to pay attention to this fellow. He turned around, his vermilion robe fluttering in the wind. Xiao Bai, let's go. Xiao Bai started walking, following Bufang. Boom! 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 The man and the puppet headed straight for the door. Did this young master allow you to leave? Tong Chung gently exhaled as he asked. He had heard that this mortal was cold and arrogant, but he didn't expect that he would still be this arrogant in front of him. This mortal was really stupid. Bu Fong didn't seem to hear Tong Cheng's words as he continued walking. Did I say you could leave? Boom! Tong Cheng's eyes widened. In the next moment, a terrifying aura instantly burst forth from his body. The entire space seemed to have turned into a quagmire at this moment. Everyone in the room felt their breathing become sluggish as fear surfaced on their faces. Tong Chung of the Tong family was an immortal chef, an existence at 1-star, true immortal realm. When a true immortal realm expert was enraged, everybody was frightened. It was a formidable pressure that pressed on their chests like a giant rock, making it hard for them to breathe. Xin Yuan Xiaohui widened his eyes. Blue veins bulged on his body as he tried to resist the pressure in the air. Although he had become an immortal chef, his true energy cultivation base hadn't reached the true immortal realm. In fact, the people living in the outer ring of the immortal city were all below the true immortal realm. The Heaven Chief, the aristocratic families, and the true immortal realm experts all lived in the inner ring. The gap between him and Tong Chung was still big. Xin Yuan Xian was petrified. He held his breath, not daring to breathe loudly. The other aristocratic family's youngsters squinted, looking at Tong Chung in fright. He was a genius of the Tong family's younger generation, an immortal chef, and a 1-star true immortal realm expert. His halo was dazzling. Tong Chung was the hope of the Tong family. Feeling the pressure in the air, the other aristocratic family's youngsters sighed. Perhaps only the geniuses of their families could compete with Tong Chung. For example, the Gongshu family's Gongshu Shi and the Zhang family's Zhang Yang. They were the geniuses of their families, and they were as dazzling as stars. The atmosphere suddenly became chilly. Tong Cheng's eyes were cold. An icy aura emitted from his body, pressing down on Bu Fong. He was just a divine spirit realm expert with one divine flame, but he could use his pressure to make Bu Fong kneel. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. This was because Bu Fong did not care about his pressure at all. Tong Cheng's pressure at the true immortal realm didn't make Bu Fong kneel. Since Bu Fong had the system, he was immune to any kind of pressure. Slowly turning around, Bu Fong looked calm and collected. His calmness and composure made many people suck in a breath of cold air. This mortal was a little mysterious. Mu Lunar's body was shivering. She looked at Tong Chung and Bu Fong in disbelief. Do you know what this lump of iron is called? How can you say it's your earth immortal puppet? Bu Fong asked, his face expressionless. I said it's mine, so it's mine. Tong Cheng's hair fluttered as he clasped his hands behind his back, walking toward Bu Fong. With every step he took, the onlookers felt an incomparable pressure on their minds. It was as if a hand had grabbed them. Mortal, you're from the Hidden Dragon Continent, right? My Earth Immortal Puppet was lost in the Hidden Dragon Continent. That's why the Earth Immortal Puppet next to you belongs to me. Tong Chung said coldly. Tong Cheng's words surprised Bu Fong. Lost in the Hidden Dragon Continent. Bu Fong arched his brows. Was Tong Cheng's Earth Immortal Puppet the golden figure that guarded the entrance to the Heaven Chief Realm? When the Lord Ghost smashed that figure with his paw, he had said that it was an Earth Immortal Puppet. After the golden figure was smashed, a crystal fell out, which Xiaobai swallowed. Did that Earth Immortal Puppet belong to Tong Chung? At this moment, Tong Cheng's eyes fell on Xiaobai. His eyes were filled with excitement and greed. Tong Cheng's desire for the Earth Immortal Puppet made him unable to restrain his greed. If Bu Fong had become the Heaven Chief Realm, he would have been a little afraid. However, Bu Fong was just a special grade chef, so he didn't have to be afraid. He was just a special grade chef. If he was killed, so be it. Would the Heaven Chief Hall of the city, Lord's Mansion, confront the Tong family for a special grade chef? Xiaobai doesn't belong to you. Bu Fong thought for a long time, then said seriously. Facing Tong Cheng's overbearing attitude, Bu Fong chose to ignore him. Tong Cheng squinted. A moment later, he flicked his finger. A wisp of true energy instantly turned into an arrow, tearing the void and shooting toward Bufong's head. Even though they were in the Heaven Chief Hall, Tong Chung didn't hesitate to attack. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes twinkled. With a buzzing sound, the war god stick shot out, hitting the arrow made of true energy. There was a loud explosion. Whitey's body trembled for a while. It can actually stop my finger. The more I look at this Earth Immortal puppet, the more satisfied I am. Tong Chung grinned. He became more excited. Xiao Bai's body seemed to be full of magic, like a black hole that attracted his mind. True Immortal Realm. Bufong furrowed his brows. Was the true Immortal Realm above the Divine Spirit Realm? Hades' era should be in existence at the true Immortal Realm. As for the Lord Go, Bufong couldn't figure it out. But a buzzing sound echoed. Tong Cheng's figure disappeared from his spot. A moment later, he reappeared right next to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes twinkled. Lightning shot out as he struck his stick at Tong Chung. Tens of thousands of stick shadows scattered. Lightning arcs danced as they turned into a single stick. However, this incomparably powerful rod was blocked by Tong Chung. Tong Cheng's palm seemed to have turned into a piece of jade, which looked like glass. The war god stick smashed down, but it was easily caught. Boom! Tong Chung raised his hand, and an invisible force bombarded Xiao Bai's body. Xiao Bai was sent flying. He directly smashed into the wall, creating a deep pit in it. Weak, but you can absorb lightning. I'm very interested in this effect. Tong Chung smiled faintly. Then, Tong Chung turned to Bufong. Now, you're the only one left. Bufong was expressionless, but there was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. Give this Earth Immortal puppet to me, and I'll spare you the pain. If you don't want it, my Tong family has many tools to torture people. Tong Chung said. The aristocratic families were indeed domineering. Tong Cheng's words made the audience take a deep breath. They felt a little scared. Actually, you had a chance. If you could become the Heaven Chief, I wouldn't have attacked you. Unfortunately, you disappointed me. You didn't condense immortal energy, so you couldn't become the Heaven Chief. Become the Heaven Chief? Bufong furrowed his brows. Tong Chung, this is the Heaven Chief Hall. You're not allowed to act presumptuously here. All of a sudden, Tong Chung was bewildered. From a distance, Mu Luer strode over. City Lord Mu's daughter? Why is she meddling in other people's business? Tong Chung furrowed his brows in doubt. Young Master Tong, young Pavilion Master Mu is right. The Heaven Chief Hall won't allow you to act presumptuously. An aged voice rang out. Manager Chen's aged face gradually appeared as he looked at Tong Chung in the distance. You want to offend me for immortal? You should know that offending me is the same as offending the Tong family. Can you afford this price? Tong Chung sneered. Things were getting more interesting. When the onlookers saw Mu Luer and Manager Chen stand up for Bufong, they had a playful look in their eyes. Did the Tong family want to start a war with the City Lord because of immortal? However, just as the atmosphere was about to turn hostile, Bufong coughed, as though he was about to say something. Mu Luer turned to look at Bufong, her face solemn. You should leave first. Since you've become a special grade chef in the Heaven Chief Hall, our Heaven Chief Hall will ensure your safety. He's just a special grade chef. Mu Luer, do you really want to go against me? Tong Cheng's aura became more oppressive. Even the air seemed to tremble under his pressure. Manager Chen's wizened face didn't change. His white hair fluttered, and the pressure of a true immortal realm expert expanded from his body. It seemed like he had made his stand clear. The atmosphere was so tense that no one dared to breathe too loudly. Bufong took out the black turtle constellation walk, smashing it on the ground. Boom! With a loud bang, the heavy black turtle constellation walk seemed to have sunk into the ground, instantly attracting the attention of the audience. Tong Chung, Mu Luer, and Manager Chen couldn't help but turn to look at him. Before I leave, I want to ask you a question. After becoming a special grade chef, how long will it take for me to take the Heaven Chief test? Can I take the test now? Bufong asked, his face emotionless. Take the Heaven Chief test? Everybody was bewildered. A moment later, they looked at Bufong. Their eyes shrank. Bufong held the black turtle constellation Wak in one hand. His aura rose rapidly under people's perception. 1 divine flame, 2 divine flames, 3 divine flames. In just a breath, he had turned from a divine spirit realm expert with 1 divine flame to a divine spirit realm expert with 9 divine flames. At the same time, the system's serious voice rang out in his head. Chapter 966. Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary task. Open a branch restaurant in the Immortal City. You will receive the task reward, Cutting Immortal Style. Congratulations to the host for completing the turnover task. You will be promoted. You will receive the task reward. The system's serious voice echoed in Bufong's head. This voice made Bufong a little bewildered. Then, the corners of his mouth rose. He had broken through. He hadn't thought that he would break through at this moment. After more than 3 years, he had finally broken through. It was the right time for him to break through. Now that he had broken through, Bufong's aura changed. His true energy fluctuated, rising unceasingly. A sparkling, jade-like divine altar emerged above his head. Flames filled the air. 1 divine flame, 2 divine flames, 3 divine flames, 9 divine flames danced on the divine altar. At this moment, Bufong's aura reached its peak, and the pressure on his body was naturally released. The vermilion robe fluttered, and an earth-yellow halo covered Bufong's body. When this scene entered the eyes of the crowd, it caused them all to be shocked. Did that mortal take drugs or something? How could his cultivation base increase so fast? The advancement of cultivation base had always been done step by step. With such a fast advancement, it was easy for him to enter bedevilment. Could it be that this mortal had used some kind of secret technique? That's right. That must be it. However, since it could boost someone from the divine spirit realm to the peak of the divine spirit realm, it meant that this secret technique wasn't simple. However, the onlookers were still a little skeptical. They didn't understand why Bufong had erupted his cultivation base at this moment. Even if he used a secret technique, there was still a big gap between his and Tongcheng's cultivation base. The true immortal realm was 1 level higher than the divine spirit realm. Even if Bufong had reached the peak of the divine spirit realm, Tongcheng could still kill Bufong in an instant. It was the suppression and gap between their realms, a gap that couldn't be bridged. Swoosh, his cultivation base gradually calmed down. As the divine flames vanished, Bufong calmly lifted his head, looking around. The onlookers were dumbstruck, as though they were shocked by his performance. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. What was there to be shocked about? It was just a daily breakthrough. But that wasn't the point. I'm asking you a question, Bufong said. His words immediately brought everyone back to their senses. The surrounding people immediately looked at Bufong as if they were looking a lunatic. Heaven Chief Assessment? The corners of Tongcheng's mouth twitched disdainfully. Bufong could summon lightning, but he hadn't condensed immortal chi yet. This meant that Bufong's accumulation was not enough. It was impossible for him to become the Heaven Chief in a short time. This was the consensus of the Heaven Chief realm. Xinyuan Xiaohui, for example, had only managed to break through and become the Heaven Chief after several years of accumulation and great talent. Bufong had not been able to become the Heaven Chief before, but in the blink of an eye, how could he become the Heaven Chief? As the young pavilion master of the Heaven Chief Hall, of course, Mu Luer knew the reason. Manager Qin's cultivation base was really strong. He was also at the true immortal realm, which was a little bit stronger than Tongcheng. At this moment, Manager Qin's face was solemn as he indifferently looked at Bufong. Young man, don't bite off more than you can chew. I've seen your performance. I admit that I misjudged you. However, it's not easy to become the Heaven Chief. You failed once. If you want to succeed again, you will need several years of accumulation. Mu Luer nodded and said, Bufong, don't worry. As long as the Heaven Chief Hall is here, no one can touch you, not even the Tong family. You're really talented. In the future, you could become the Heaven Chief. However, you shouldn't ruin your future. The eyes of the surrounding audience also sparkled. Today's events were full of twists and turns, which made them feel good. First, Bufong had shown his excellent talent. He had triggered the lightning punishment in the special grade chef test. They had thought that he could become the Heaven Chief with his special grade chef cultivation base. However, his dishes hadn't condensed immortal energy, which had given them a big shock. Then, Tong Ching's appearance and the Heaven Chief Hall sponsor had given them a feast for their eyes. However, at the last moment, Bufong's cultivation base had skyrocketed, and he said that he wanted to take the Heaven Chief test. Why didn't he go to heaven? He had just failed the test, but he still wanted to take the Heaven Chief test. How could he become the Heaven Chief? By forcefully increasing his cultivation base. Bufong held the Black Turtle constellation walk with one hand, feeling a little speechless. I just broke through. I'll take the Heaven Chief test. That way, I won't have to take the test later. Bufong said faintly, his voice calm. However, when the others heard it, they felt that he deserved a beating. Then, he took the Immortal Chef test. Others couldn't even touch the threshold of the Heaven Chief test in their whole lives, but he said he could take the Heaven Chief test. Did he want to attract hatred? Did he want to be stabbed 1,000 times? I'm serious. Bufong was afraid that Mu Luer would think he was joking, so he reminded her again. Mu Luer's mouth twitched. You don't need to be so serious. From a distance, Xinyuan Xiaohui was also speechless. As the chef who had just taken a Heaven Chief test, he knew the difficulty of the Heaven Chief test. If it wasn't for the fact that he had accumulated enough, he might have failed this time. But why did Bufong say that it was a piece of cake? Cough. If you really want to take the Heaven Chief test, you have to wait for 3 days. The Heaven Chief test is a big event. You need to make an appointment in advance and prepare the lightning protection formation. Although you have an Earth Immortal puppet that can swallow lightning punishment, you need the lightning protection formation to be absolutely safe. Manager Chen seemed to feel the seriousness in Bufong's voice. He stroked his beard. This time, the onlookers were dumbstruck. What was going on? Did Manager Chen really think that Bufong could take the Heaven Chief test? Wasn't he just joking? After Tong Chung heard their conversation, he kept silent for a long time. After a long time, with a snicker, he burst out laughing. Tong Cheng's laughter silenced the surroundings. His voice lingered, making people look at each other in dismay. It seemed his laughter had infected them. Many youngsters from aristocratic families also laughed. Their laughter was full of mockery and disdain for Bufong. You're just a mortal, shamelessly boasting that you want to take the Heaven Chief test. Are you trying to stall for time? Let the Heaven Chief Hall value you, and let the Heaven Chief Hall protect you? It's useless. I said that this Earth Immortal puppet is mine, so it's mine. Tong Cheng's laughter stopped. It seemed as though tears were rolling down his cheeks. He indifferently looked at Bufong, the corners of his mouth curling into a mocking grin. The onlookers suddenly understood. It turned out that mortal had such a plan. Indeed, he was scheming. Hearing Tong Cheng's self-righteous analysis, Bufong was a little speechless. He rubbed his slender, white fingers. This fellow's imagination was really rich. In today's society, no one would believe that someone could take the Heaven Chief test. However, Bufong didn't want to play along with Tong Cheng's act. He picked up the Black Turtle constellation walk and slowly walked toward the door. Xiaobai, follow me. Miss Mu, after 3 days, I'll come and take the Heaven Chief test. I hope the lightning protection formation will be ready by then. Bufong's voice drifted over. Tong Cheng's face stiffened. He felt that he was being ignored. He had analyzed a lot of things, and this Bufong should at least cooperate with him and reply. You want to leave? I won't let you. Stay here, and the Earth Immortal puppet. Stay here too. Boom. Tong Cheng's aura rocketed one more time. He took a step forward, moving as if he had teleported. His speed was extremely fast. Tens of thousands of shadows gathered, dashing toward Bufong. Manager Chun didn't expect that Tong Chung would take action all of a sudden. He shouted and tried to stop him. However, Tong Chung seemed to be prepared. A golden light flashed, and a golden figure appeared in front of Manager Chun. Boom! Manager Chin's palm collided with the golden earth immortal puppet, creating a huge explosion. The golden earth immortal puppet was smashed, and it was sent flying backward. No matter what, Manager Chun was at the true immortal realm. His cultivation base was so strong that the golden earth immortal puppet couldn't resist him. Tong Cheng's eyes twinkled. His speed was extremely fast, and in just a blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Bu Fong. The onlookers were suppressed by this pressure, forcing them to back off. Some even screamed in fear. "Stay here." Tong Chung appeared in front of Bu Fong, looking down at Bu Fong with a mocking face. He was just a mortal, and in front of the Tong family's genius, he was just trash. However, shortly after, Tong Cheng's eyes focused. He found that Bu Fong's eyes were calm. It was so calm that he couldn't help but feel a ripple in his heart. He frowned, looking to the side. There, the earth immortal puppet that could swallow lightning punishment didn't move. It seemed that fellow didn't rely on the earth immortal puppet. What could it be? Even if this guy had become a peak divine spirit realm sovereign realm expert, he was still a true immortal realm expert. A mere mortal wouldn't be able to stop him. No matter what tricks he had, he would smash them all. Rumble. The air around Tong Chung seemed to be compressed. His terrifying aura surged like waves, constantly rumbling and dispersing. A palm shot out, and the void seemed to be smashed, leaving a deep, pitch-black hole. This palm twisted the void with endless power. If this palm landed, even if Bu Fong didn't die, he would be severely wounded. The onlookers couldn't help but sigh. The eyes of the aristocratic family's juniors were filled with ridicule. Xin Yuan Xiaohui's eyes were filled with regret. Xin Yuan Xin's eyes were complicated. Mu Luer's eyes seemed to be unable to bear it. Manager Chun, who had sent the golden earth immortal puppet flying, wanted to take action, but he knew it was too late. It seemed that this little chef was going to suffer a calamity. Under the onlookers' gazes, Bu Fong didn't dodge. He didn't move. He didn't even blink his eyelashes. He just stood where he was, taking Tong Cheng's palm head-on. In the eyes of the onlookers, Bu Fong was scared silly by Tong Chung. Poor kid. His eyes were wide open, as if he couldn't die in peace. Boom! Under the regretful and mocking gazes of the onlookers, Tong Cheng's palm hit Bu Fong's chest. He wanted to shatter Bu Fong's heart. Tong Cheng's mouth curved into a smile. This mortal, who dared to offend him, would soon be severely wounded, and that earth immortal puppet would belong to him. However, soon, the smile on Tong Cheng's face froze. His insufferably arrogant eyes were now filled with shock. How could it be? Bu Fong's face was emotionless as he looked at Tong Chung. The vermilion robe emitted alternating red and white radiance. It took Tong Cheng's palm head-on. There was a cracking sound, as if something had broken. The invincible vermilion robe was broken. However, Bu Fong held the black turtle constellation wok in one hand. With a buzzing sound, the bandage on his arm disappeared, revealing the black and white tattoos on his arm. The bandages fluttered in the wind. The Taotai roared as he raised the black turtle constellation wok. Bu Fong's eyes were calm as he exhaled. "Do you really want to get hit by the wok?" "Huh?" Tong Chung pulled himself together. He was bewildered. A moment later, the black wok enlarged in front of him. Chapter 967. Only Manager Chun had the chance to stop Tong Cheng's attack. However, Manager Chun was blocked by Tong Cheng's puppet, so he had lost his best chance to stop Bu Fong. The onlookers could only gawk as they watched Tong Cheng's palm violently hit Bu Fong's chest. That palm was like a thunderstorm that could shatter the illusionary void. Tong Cheng's cultivation base was at the true immortal realm, so his power was really formidable. This punch was enough to crush a mountain and shatter a long river. If that mortal chef were to take this punch head-on, he would probably be smashed into pieces. The power of that punch was really frightening. Mu Luer closed her eyes in despair. With Tong Cheng's punch, Bu Fong would definitely die. There was no doubt about it. Even if Bu Fong's earth immortal puppet tried to stop it, he wouldn't be able to stop it. What a pity. With Bu Fong's innate talent, if he had enough time, he would have definitely become a heaven chief. And now, a future heaven chief had fallen here. It was really a pity. Manager Chun sighed helplessly, not taking any more action. Xianyuan Xiaohui's eyes widened. Was Bu Fong really going to die here? The surrounding audience also held their breaths. The aristocratic family's youngsters sneered. A mortal dared to offend an aristocratic family's genius. He really didn't know how to spell the word death. All of a sudden, the scene seemed to freeze strangely. Tong Cheng's punch violently hit Bu Fong's chest. It was like a strong gust of wind was blowing behind Bu Fong, causing his vermilion robe to flutter. However, Bu Fong wasn't hurt at all. He didn't look like he was dying. How could it be? Everybody was a little bewildered. They blinked their eyes, looking at Bu Fong, who wore an indifferent face. At this moment, the air seemed to become really quiet. Tong Cheng was also a little bewildered. His powerful punch had hit Bu Fong, but he didn't even let out a fart. How could this be? Under normal circumstances, Bu Fong should not be able to withstand his punch and should be blasted in smithereens. The scene made all the people who thought Bu Fong was going to die feel shocked and uncertain. Mu Luer covered her eyes in despair, but her surroundings suddenly became silent. She couldn't help but let go of her hand, which was covering her eyes. She looked over and saw Tong Cheng's fist hitting Bu Fong's chest. It was a loving scene. Everyone's expression turned extremely strange. The vermilion robe was invincible, but this invincibility could only block one move. After one move, invincibility would enter cooldown. But it was enough. Wu Di had blocked Tong Cheng's killing strike for Bu Fong, which was enough. Because of the invincible realm's existence, Tong Cheng's punch didn't cause him any discomfort. Perhaps he would feel a slight pain from the impact of the punch. However, with the toughness of Bu Fong's body, this kind of impact didn't hurt him at all. Looking at Tong Cheng, whose face was filled with disbelief, Bu Fong held the black turtle constellation walk with one hand. The bandage on his arm was removed, revealing his black and white arm. His arm bulged like an exploding horned dragon, filled with power. The black turtle constellation walk appeared in his hand. Then he swung it, aiming at Tong Cheng's head. Tong Cheng couldn't block this walk because he didn't know how powerful the black turtle constellation walk and the Tao Tai arm would be when it was at full power. In the past, Bu Fong could use this move to kill experts who were much stronger than him. But now, Bu Fong's cultivation base had increased, and his fighting capacity had become more terrifying. If he swung the walk, even an iron head would be smashed. Of course, Tong Cheng's head was much harder than an iron head. After all, he had a true immortal realm cultivation base. Tong Cheng looked at the black turtle constellation walk, which was enlarging in front of him. It was a loud bang. The black turtle constellation walk ruthlessly smashed onto his head, causing his entire body to explode and fly away. But although there was no blood, Tong Cheng, on the other hand, felt like his head was buzzing. It was as if countless little stars were flying around him. Little stars. F***CK, those little stars. Tong Cheng was so enraged that he roared. He shook his head to clear his mind. He looked at Bu Fong, his face filled with rage. He was dumbfounded by that mortal's walk. This was a disgrace. Bu Fong wore a calm face. Looking at the enraged Tong Cheng, he exhaled gently. A moment later, his Tao Tai arm bulged and swung. There was a muffled bang. The black turtle constellation walk struck Tong Cheng's head once again as the onlookers were dumbstruck. This time, Tong Cheng staggered backward. A stream of warm liquid slowly trickled down his nose. Tong Cheng's eyes were dull. His aura had almost scattered. The onlookers didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Young Master Tong Cheng. Was he hit silly? It hurts to look at him. When that black walk hit his head, it sounded like thunder. So terrifying. He's worthy of being young Master Tong Cheng. His head is even harder than an immortal crystal. The onlookers pulled themselves together, discussing animatedly. They looked at Bu Fong with an odd face. No one had thought that this mortal would dare to fight back. What made them speechless was that young Master Tong Cheng was struck silly by the two walk strikes. His nose was bleeding. Funny. However, he was even more arrogant. With young Master Tong Cheng's status, how could that mortal dare to fight back? How could he hurt him? He was enraged, infuriated. Tong Cheng wiped off the blood from his nose and let out a deep roar like a wounded beast. His terrifying aura expanded unceasingly from his body. Damn mortal, I'm going to tear you into pieces. Tong Cheng bellowed, his eyes bloodshot. His aura stagnated, shaking everything around him. The entire room seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Streams of true energy swayed behind him like ribbons. They seemed to turn into pillars that could support the sky. Waves of true energy surged. That stream of true energy shattered the roof, which had been smashed by the lightning strike. Crushed stones flew everywhere. The black turtle constellation Wok returned to Bu Fong's hand. Bu Fong frowned, looking at the enraged Tong Cheng. It seemed he had to show his real power. After his breakthrough, Bu Fong's mental force skyrocketed. In fact, what made Bu Fong strong wasn't his cultivation base, but his mental force. As a chef, his spirit sea was so vast that it was hard to imagine. It was like a vast ocean. When Bu Fong had ignited his first divine flame, his mental force, supported by the dragon bone kitchen knife, could rival the peak of the divine spirit realm. Now, Bu Fong's cultivation base had broken through again, reaching the peak of the divine spirit realm. His mental force seemed to have broken through the shackles to reach the true immortal realm. As his mental force increased, the connection between him and the god of cooking Set became sharper. Once he got the dragon bone kitchen knife support, his mental force could reach the level of a 2-star true immortal realm expert. The true immortal realm was different from the divine realm. The divine realm only required one to ignite the divine flame. Although it could strengthen one's mental force, it was chaotic. However, the true immortal realm was different. When one reached the true immortal realm, the strength of his body and mental force would increase by leaps and bounds. The divine spirit realm would open the spirit sea. At the true immortal realm, an origin soul would be condensed above the spirit sea. At the 1-star true immortal realm, an origin soul would be condensed above the spirit sea. From the 2-star to the 8-star true immortal realm, an endless sky would appear above the origin soul. 7 stars would appear in that sky, which would use their radiance to refine the origin soul, making it stronger. At the 9-star true immortal realm, the 7 stars would condense and condense the principles, reaching a supreme achievement. Eventually, they would open a small world in their spirit sea. It could be said that the true immortal realm was a truly terrifying realm. After each star breakthrough, the growth of one's cultivation base would be tremendous. The gap between each realm was like a moat between heaven and earth. This was also the reason why Bu Fong's mental force, with the help of the dragon bone kitchen knife, could only be compared to a 2-star true immortal realm expert. However, it was enough. If Bu Fong urged the mental force in his spirit sea, he could affect Tong Cheng's will in just a blink of an eye. At that time, he could use the black turtle constellation Wok to smash Tong Cheng until he fainted. Although he couldn't smash him to death, it was enough to make him question his life. Young Master Tong Cheng. That's enough. All of a sudden, just as Tong Cheng was enraged and Bu Fong was about to use the dragon bone kitchen knife, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Bu Fong, standing between Bu Fong and Tong Cheng. This old man was none other than Manager Chun. This is the Heaven Chief Hall, not your Tong family. If you dare to be presumptuous again, I won't be polite anymore. Manager Chin's face was solemn. Looking at Tong Cheng's continuous bursting of his cultivation base, which had damaged the special grade chef test room, his face became extremely gloomy. He was the manager of the Heaven Chief Hall. To build a special grade chef test room, he had to spend a lot of immortal crystals and resources. Tong Cheng's destruction made his heart bleed. Ignorant old man, get lost. Today, I must kill this mortal. Tong Cheng's eyes seemed to turn scarlet as he roared angrily. However, his roar was met with Administrator Chen's eyes, which were filled with even more fury. If you dare to be presumptuous again, The Heaven Chief Hall won't be polite anymore. At that time, I will ask the head of the Tong family to come to the Heaven Chief Hall to ask for him." Manager Chun thundered. A moment later, his aura also burst out. The moment Manager Chin's aura burst out from the Heaven Chief Hall, the aura of true immortal realm experts shot up into the sky. No matter what, the Heaven Chief Hall was the force of the City Lord, so its foundation wasn't small. The aura of true immortal realm experts made the faces of the onlookers, including the disciples of the aristocratic families, change. Among those true immortal realm experts, there was a powerful 2-star true immortal realm expert. Under the impact of those auras, Tong Chung seemed to pull himself together. His aura gradually calmed down, but the murderous intent in his eyes became more condensed. However, as soon as Tong Chang's aura calmed down, he looked into the distance. His eyes widened and became bloodshot. He almost vomited a mouthful of blood. Bu Fong was a little bewildered. The onlookers were also bewildered. They turned around to look. Little White slowly walked to the side of the golden puppet that was almost shattered by Manager Chin's palm strike. The palm that was like a cattail leaf fan suddenly descended, grabbed the golden puppet's head, and lifted it up. A moment later, the onlookers took in a breath of cold air. The golden puppet was torn to shreds. Boom! Boom! Its materials scattered on the ground as Xiao Bai reached out his hand to search the puppet's body. Eventually, he took out an orange-yellow core crystal. Grabbing the crystal, a black hole appeared on Xiao Bai's abdomen. The crystal was shoved into his stomach, making a cracking sound. Instantly, the crystal was swallowed. Tui, Tong Chung stared blankly at the scene. He was so angry that his lips shivered. He had lost another Earth Immortal puppet. Moreover, the core of the Earth Immortal puppet was eaten. It was like going for wool and coming home shorn. The corners of the onlookers' mouths twitched. No one had expected such an outcome. In the end, Tong Chung was the one who suffered a loss. Bu Fong has agreed to our Heaven Chief Hall's Heaven Chief test. Young Master Tong Chung, please don't hold back. Wait until the end of the Heaven Chief's test before you make your decision. Manager Chen didn't care about Tong Chung, whose heart was dripping blood. After the Heaven Chief's test, if Bu Fong doesn't become the Heaven Chief, you can do whatever you want with him. If he becomes the Heaven Chief, you can settle your grudges among yourselves. It has nothing to do with the Heaven Chief Hall. Tong Cheng's chest heaved. Although he was a genius of the Tong family, he didn't dare to act presumptuously in front of the Heaven Chief Hall. After all, the Heaven Chief Hall had the support of the City Lord's mansion. The day the Heaven Chief's test ends is the day you die mortal. Tong Chung coldly looked at the emotionless Bu Fong. Then he angrily shouted, flicked his sleeves, and stormed out. His body turned into a jet of light, dashing out of the room and disappearing from people's sight. It was over. The onlookers looked at Bu Fong strangely, then left the room. Bu Fong nodded to Manager Chun, scattering the black turtle constellation wok and the dragon bone kitchen knife. Clasping his hands, he leisurely walked out of the room. Xiao Bai, who had swallowed a crystal core, followed behind Bu Fong. A human and a puppet quickly disappeared from the special grade chef test room. Manager Chun looked at Bu Fong's back, taking a deep breath. What a miraculous mortal. 3 days from now, you will decide your fate. Whether you live or die depends on your luck. Anyway, how did that kid block Tong Cheng's punch? Manager Chen thought about Bu Fong, who had received Tong Cheng's punch but wasn't hurt at all. He was still confused. Mu Luer walked to Manager Chen's side and lightly sighed. Thank you, Manager Chun, for helping me, said Mu Luer. Young Pavilion Master, I'm just doing what I should do. Since Bu Fong has accepted the Heaven Chief's test, we can't just watch him get beaten to death in the Heaven Chief Hall, said Manager Chen casually. Yeah, he dared to accept the Heaven Chief's test. I can't see through that mortal, muttered Mu Luer. Mu Luer mumbled. Tong Cheng's body crossed the void like a jet of light, landing hard on the ground. His face was so dark that it looked like it was about to drip water. His mind flickered, and another Earth Immortal puppet appeared in front of him. His mental force surged. A moment later, Tong Cheng's mental force poured into the Earth Immortal puppet, making its aura rise unceasingly as though it was about to explode. Find that mortal for me. I want to know where he is staying in the immortal city. If you have a chance, kill him. I'm not the kind of person who will wait for the Heaven Chief's test. On the long street, Bu Fong and Xiao Bai were walking slowly. All of a sudden, Bu Fong quickened his pace, his heart filled with anticipation. He couldn't wait to see what the new branch looked like. Chapter 968. Xiao Bai stood behind Bu Fong. After swallowing the lightning punishment and the earth immortal puppet's core, Xiao Bai looked even more profound. At this moment, Bu Fong was a little bewildered. He stood in front of a restaurant, looking at it. He couldn't help but rub his head. This restaurant wasn't chosen by Bu Fong. After Bu Fong had passed the special grade chef test, the system had chosen it and told it to Bu Fong. At first, Bu Fong was excited. If it was the system's product, it must be the best. However, shortly after, Bu Fong found that he was wrong. When he saw this small restaurant, he felt like 10,000 black dogs were running in his heart, their faces mocking him. Pushing the door, Bu Fong stepped into this brand new restaurant. However, as soon as the door was pushed open, Bu Fong's eyes brightened. He stepped into the restaurant with a slightly surprised expression. The system had given him another surprise this time. Indeed, it was a surprise. This restaurant was totally different from the restaurants that Bu Fong was familiar with. The decoration style didn't follow the style of Fong Fong's little store. Many places had changed. As soon as he entered the restaurant, he saw that there weren't many square tables in the restaurant. Or rather, there weren't many tables in the restaurant. Since the restaurant wasn't big, it looked a little crowded. Thus, the dining tables were built around the kitchen. The dining tables were arranged in a circle, facing the kitchen. The kitchen was sealed with an ice-cold bronze door, so people couldn't see what was inside. However, it also made people curious. Of course, although the decorations were different, the restaurant's decoration was still the same. It was warm and cozy. As soon as he stepped into the restaurant, he felt calm. It seemed that once he entered the restaurant, all of his worries would vanish. Bu Fong slowly walked around the restaurant. This restaurant was like the Fong Fong restaurant when Bu Fong had just traveled to this world. Everything was brand new. Of course, as a chef, Bu Fong still cared about the kitchen. Although the dining tables were arranged in a circle and surrounded the kitchen, there was still a space for people to pass through. Bu Fong walked along the passageway to the bronze gate and pushed it open. Unexpectedly, the bronze door was not as heavy as he had imagined. Instead, it was very light. It was effortless for him to push it open. He stepped into the kitchen. Only then did Bu Fong exhale a long breath. The decorations in the kitchen hadn't changed much. Everything looked so familiar. This was normal. A good chef would naturally have familiar equipment in a kitchen. Only in this way could he cook delicious dishes. This was because the degree of familiarity with the tools would affect the mood of the chef to a large extent. After playing with the tools in the kitchen for a while, Bu Fong walked out of the kitchen. As soon as he came out, he was faced with the dining tables. Bu Fong twitched the corner of his mouth. The system's arrangement was quite interesting. If he came out of the kitchen, the first thing he would see would be the sincere eyes of the diners. There's always a creepy feeling. Host, please note that the restaurant has just been established. The host has one chance to choose a name for the restaurant. In his head, the serious voice of the system echoed. This made Bu Fong a little surprised. Then, he smiled playfully. The name of the restaurant? Choose a name. What kind of names are there for me to choose? Bu Fong asked. The system was silent for a while. It didn't answer Bu Fong right away. Soon, the system replied again. Restaurant names: Heaven Chief Restaurant, Heaven Chief Restaurant, Heaven Chief Residence. The system's voice was calm. However, after listening to it, Bu Fong's heart wasn't calm. System, your naming skills are not bad. Can't you be more creative? Bu Fong mercilessly expressed his disdain for the system. Regarding Bu Fong's words, the system chose to ignore it. Little Black Xiao Baihua. Bu Fong's naming skills. The system said, where did you get the F***king confidence to look down on others? Heaven Chief Residence, out of the game? This kind of name can also be in the list? Bu Fong expressionlessly ridiculed the system. In the end, Bu Fong didn't struggle too much. Then Heaven Chief Restaurant it is, Bu Fong said, rubbing his forehead. Buzz, as soon as Bu Fong's voice fell, his mind flickered. He strode out of the restaurant, turning his head to look at the restaurant's door. Above the door, there was a horizontal board with the words Heaven Chief Restaurant, written in a natural and artistic manner. Bu Fong nodded in satisfaction. Now he had a restaurant that belonged to him in the immortal city. He closed the restaurant's door. Bu Fong took Xiao Bai, turning around and leaving. He wanted to go back to the inn and bring the others here. The inn wasn't far from the restaurant. In just a short while, they arrived at the inn's ground floor. Standing on the ground floor, Bu Fong furrowed his brows. He turned his head to look behind him, feeling something strange. However, he couldn't tell what was strange about it. Clasping his hands, Bu Fong didn't think too much about it. He directly went upstairs. After Bu Fong went upstairs, a golden figure appeared at the inn's entrance. That golden figure was shaking unceasingly, as though its body couldn't bear the formidable energy contained in its body. That puppet was the one Tong Cheng had released. This Earth Immortal puppet had fused with Tong Cheng's mental force, which made it extremely powerful. It could almost use half of Tong Cheng's cultivation base. However, this Earth Immortal puppet's material wasn't good enough. After several hours, it would explode. However, several hours were enough for the Earth Immortal puppet to complete the task Tong Cheng had given it. Bu Fong returned to his room in the inn. He pushed the door open, and the situation inside didn't change much. The Black Dragon King was playing with his daughter, Hua, while Hua was by Lord Go's side. She squinted, enjoying the Lord Go's aura. Hades Era leaned against the door, holding a spicy strip in his mouth. His face was solemn. He was sitting on the Netherworld ship, swinging her slender, white legs. When they saw Bu Fong return, their eyes brightened. Bu Fong's return meant that they would have something to eat. Bu Fong, young man, I heard that you want to take the special grade chef test. Did it go well? Hades Era asked with a spicy strip in his mouth. Bu Fong looked at Hades Era and nodded. Just daily cooking. I'm a special grade chef now. All right, I found a restaurant. We should move there now, Bu Fong said. Hades Era listened to Bu Fong, and his eyes brightened. You found a restaurant? Are we going to open a restaurant in the Immortal City? Bu Fong nodded. Immediately, they left the restaurant excitedly. Of course, Lord Dog still had a sleepy face as he was dragged away by Nether King Erha. Even if he was dragged away, he still did not wake up. This fat dog was getting better at sleeping. Bu Fong went to the front desk of the inn. After paying the immortal crystals for the room, he walked out of the inn with a smile on the waiter's face. The group walked out. Hades Era, who was standing next to Bu Fong, suddenly felt something. Seems like someone wants to do something. Hades Era blinked, looking at Bu Fong. Of course, he could feel the change in Bu Fong's aura. At first, he had just ignited one divine flame at the divine spirit realm, but now he had reached the peak of the divine spirit realm. Bu Fong's breakthrough always surprised people. Swish! A stifling sound of air exploding echoed. A moment later, the air rumbled unceasingly. A golden energy ball shot toward Bu Fong. Because of its fast speed, the energy ball became a little oval. Bu Fong furrowed his brows. Hades Era held a spicy strip in his mouth. His mouth moved, making the spicy strip move up and down. Then, with a slap, he thrust out his palm. His palm hit the energy ball. Bu Fong opened his hand and grabbed the energy ball. Sizzle! The energy ball spun unceasingly on Hades Era's palm. Hades Era made a sound of surprise, his eyes slightly twitching. Interesting, the power of the divine ethereal realm. The corners of Hades Era's mouth rose. The divine ethereal realm was considered a good existence in the earth prison of the netherworld. His palm squeezed, and the energy ball was crushed. Thousands of light beams scattered. Bu Fong, young man, who did you offend this time? Hades Era glanced at Bu Fong, smiling. This time, the opponent is really strong. I will give you a fair price. 10 spicy strips for one attack from I. What do you think? 10 spicy strips. Ever since Hades Era learned how to bargain, his price was getting more and more insatiable. Bufong arched his brows, looking at Hades' era. This time, the opponent isn't ordinary. He's an expert at the divine ethereal realm. Do you know the divine ethereal realm? It's the true immortal realm you guys are talking about. Hades' era saw the distrust in Bufong's eyes, so he hurried to explain. He, Nether King Erha, always did business in an open and above-board manner. He never took small advantages. True immortal realm? Bufong furrowed his brows. A true immortal realm expert wanted to deal with him? Was it Tong Chung? No, it couldn't be. Tong Chung was a member of the Tong family. Since he had promised the Heaven Chief Hall, he wouldn't attack him openly. Otherwise, the Heaven Chief Hall would turn its back on him. At that time, Tong Chung would be in big trouble. If it wasn't Tong Chung, who could it be? Boom, boom. Explosions echoed unceasingly in the air. In the next moment, golden energy balls shot out from every corner. Is it fun to hide in a corner and ambush people? Hades' era rolled his eyes, and the spicy strip in his mouth trembled. Hades' era snapped his fingers, and nether energy shot up into the sky from under his feet. The nether energy rose around him, quickly turning into a storm. Boom, boom, boom. The golden energy balls hit the nether energy storm, but they didn't even shake it. The golden energy balls were all bounced off. Boom, boom. The bounced energy balls splashed everywhere, causing the surrounding ground to be full of holes and craters. With a swoosh, the nether energy scattered. Everyone revealed themselves. The passers-by, who had been frightened by the battle, retreated and watched from a distance. They didn't dare to approach. Clanging sounds echoed. A golden figure slowly approached from a distance, amidst the smoke and dust. The golden figure was filled with violent energy. The energy surged as though it wanted to shatter the air. The violent energy made the golden figure tremble unceasingly. Oh, a puppet? Hades' era widened his eyes. Bufong was a little bewildered. Bufong, young man, you're not worth enough. The other has sent only one puppet to deal with you. They're looking down on you. 10 spicy strips, and I will help you dismantle that puppet. Hades' era looked at Bufong, his eyes shining. As soon as Hades' era's voice faded, his face turned the color of a pig's liver. Buzz, the Lord Go, who was lying on the ground, rolled his eyes. He extended his exquisite paw, gently patting the golden puppet in the distance. Tens of thousands of beams of energy congregated, forming an exquisite dog paw. The dog paw fell. The golden earth immortal puppet didn't have time to react. It was smashed into the ground, shattering into pieces. The violent energy didn't burst out at all. It died. Don't bother. It's just a paw. Bufong kid, remember to cook a plate of sweet and sour ribs for me. The Lord Go. The Lord Go isn't picky. Dragon meat is fine. The Lord Go yawned sleepily, talking to Bufong. Then he glanced at the bald black dragon king, who was glaring at him. Chapter 969. Just a paw. Yeah, it was just a paw's matter. Hades' era looked at the golden puppet that had been smashed into smithereens, his mouth twitching. He had never thought that this shameless dog would suddenly attack him. The most important thing was, this was clearly a business deal that he had negotiated. The 10 delicious spicy strips had left him just like that. His heart was so sad that he couldn't breathe. Lord Go stuck his tongue out and exhaled, indifferently glancing at Hades' era. Lord Go only wants a serving of sweet and sour ribs, preferably with dragon meat. Unlike you, who still wants to bargain. If you have so much energy, why don't you just use your paw to solve the problem? Lord Go said. Hades' era's eyes were filled with grief and indignation. You're right. How can I refute you? The Black Dragon King was also annoyed. He didn't understand why this black dog always wanted Bufong to cook him. What's so good about dragon meat? This Dragon King has never tasted it before. Moreover, we're partners who love each other. How can we eat dragon meat? The Black Dragon King's bald head glowed as if it was about to shine. Hua rode on the Black Dragon King's neck, patting his bald head with her small palm, giggling. Let's go to the restaurant, Bufong said. The others nodded, following him. Although Hades' era was sad, he didn't have any way to deal with it. He couldn't do anything to that mangy dog. If it were before, he could teach that mangy dog to be a dog. They disappeared from the long street, just like that. The people around didn't dare to breathe loudly, watching them leave. The ground around had been smashed, and the onlookers thought that a big battle was about to happen. They didn't expect that the result would be so simple. The golden puppet that attacked was so strong, and it seemed to have reached the true immortal realm. However, it was smashed by a dog's paw. Were all dogs so awesome now? How could they eat dog meat in the future? Tui. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Tong Chung was sitting in a tea house, drinking good wine. His face changed instantly. Eventually, he opened his mouth, spitting out blood mixed with wine. His eyes were instantly covered with a layer of blood veins. His head felt like it was being pricked by countless needles. This pain almost drove him crazy. Ouch. Damn it. Could it be that the Earth Immortal puppet was destroyed again? Tong Cheng's eyes were bloodshot. He sat on the chair, clenching his fists and curling his lips. When the Earth Immortal puppet he sent to the lower worlds was destroyed, he had already experienced this kind of pain. That was the result of the mental energy he sent into the Earth Immortal puppet being brutally crushed. This time, there was no doubt that the Earth Immortal puppet he sent to deal with the mortal chef was also destroyed, that mortal. Even if he were to be hacked into pieces, it wouldn't be too much. He grabbed the bottle of wine and poured it on his face. The cold wine splashed on Tong Cheng's face, which made him sober up a lot. Boom! The jar of wine was emptied, and it was ruthlessly smashed onto the ground, shattering into pieces. I will never forgive you. 3 days from now will be the day you die. Tong Chung endured the needle-pricking pain in his head as he swore. Squeak! He pushed the restaurant's door open. Hades' era, the Black Dragon King, and the others entered the restaurant one after another. Oh my God! Buffon young man, where did you find this restaurant? Why is it as small as a dog's kennel? Nether King Erha looked at the restaurant, which was much smaller than the one in the Hidden Dragon continent, and asked in surprise. The Black Dragon King, who was also bald, widened his eyes. The place was remote, and the restaurant was small. Buffon, my little friend, didn't you want to do business? Lord Go strode his elegant cat-like steps into the restaurant. He lifted his dog eyes, indifferently scanning the place. Eventually, his eyes landed on Hades' era. Why do you look down on a dog's kennel? Moreover, who told you that a dog's kennel is small? I look down on a dog's kennel. What about it? You mangy dog, do you want to fight with I? I don't like you for a long time. Come on. Hades' era rolled his eyes, rolling up his sleeves like a ruffian. Lord Go rolled his eyes. He didn't want to pay attention to this idiot. Retard. After the Lord Go said some gentle words, he found a corner in the restaurant and nestled there. Hua jumped down from the Black Dragon King's neck, landing steadily on the ground. No matter what, she was a 7-colored sky-devouring python, and her cultivation base wasn't weak. She ran happily to the Lord Go, hugging Lord Go's thigh, her face contented. The Black Dragon King's face darkened. Did his daughter take him as her mount? It's a little small. I don't have a place to put the Netherworld ship. You scanned the entire restaurant, furrowing her beautiful brows. There's a special room upstairs. You can stay there, Buffon said, glancing at you. Then Buffon took the lead, heading upstairs. Upstairs, the space was quite spacious, and there were many rooms. Hades' era's eyes brightened. Did he have his own room? You pursed her lips, feeling a little happy in her heart. After the rooms were assigned, they went downstairs. The Black Dragon King stubbornly asked for a room, but he naturally had to pay a price to get a room. Buffon looked at the Black Dragon King, saying, "You could be a waiter in this restaurant to pay the rent." Hearing this, the Black Dragon King's eyes widened. I'm the Black Dragon King of the endless sea. I can turn the clouds and rain with one hand, a supreme existence. How can I be a waiter in this shabby restaurant of yours? The Black Dragon King's nostrils flared, saying, however, Buffon didn't answer him. He just looked at him indifferently, which made the Black Dragon King feel awkward. The Black Dragon King thought about it. As a black dragon, if he walked out, he would be killed in less than half a day. This world was much more dangerous than the hidden dragon continent. There were many true Immortal Realm experts here, and the most important thing was the true Immortal Realm experts were all F***king chefs. If he left the restaurant, he would become a F***king moving ingredient, the kind that everyone loved. At that time, he would become the so-called sweet and sour dragon ribs. Good. A waiter is such a noble profession, which suits the Black Dragon King's dignified identity. The Black Dragon King rubbed his bald head, saying seriously, "It's not that hard to be a waiter. You just have to serve the dishes and settle the bill. It's okay if you don't have IQ," Bufong said casually, glancing at the Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King was bewildered. Was Bufong complimenting him? Bufong didn't mind the Black Dragon King. He walked to the door, pushing it open. "Okay, since everything is ready, let's start the business, Buzz." However, right at this moment, the system's serious voice echoed in Bufong's head. "Temporary task. As a brand new restaurant, how can we not have an opening ceremony? Please invite at least 3 colleagues to attend the opening ceremony of Heaven Chief Restaurant. Task reward, dreamy soup dumplings." The system suddenly issued a temporary task, which made Bufong dumbstruck. Opening ceremony? There was such a thing? Why didn't this happen before the opening of the restaurant? Bufong rubbed his head. He had to invite 3 colleagues to attend the opening ceremony? This was a little troublesome. In the Heaven Chief Restaurant, he didn't have many acquaintances. How could he invite them? Xianyuan Xiaohui was one, and Mu Luer was another. Who else could he invite? Manager Chun or Tong Chung? Rubbing his chin, Bufong finally decided on the list of invitees. Entering the kitchen, Bufong began to work. Soon, he walked out with 3 simple invitations in his hand. He called the Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King rubbed his bald head. Just now, he was playing with his daughter. When he was called by Bufong, his heart was a little emotional. When he heard that Bufong had asked him to send the invitations, his first reaction was to refuse. What a joke. In the eyes of those chefs in the Heaven Chief Restaurant, he was just a moving ingredient. If he went to send the invitations, he didn't know if he could come back alive. Even if he came back, he didn't know if he would lose his arms or legs. However, under Bufong's cold and emotionless gaze, the Black Dragon King finally chose to compromise. Holding the 3 invitations in his hand, he wrapped himself tightly in his black cloak and left the restaurant to deliver the invitations. Bufong sat at the table, gently exhaling. He took out a template, using a pen to write and draw on the wooden board. Shortly after, he wrote a menu. There were only 3 dishes on the menu: hot pot, barbecue, blood lobster. Moreover, under the 3 dishes, there was a line of small, crooked words: "Order whatever you want to eat." Bufong's handwriting was indeed a sharp contrast with his cooking skills. He almost couldn't see what he was writing. However, Bufong was satisfied. After admiring his handwriting for a while, he hung the menu on the wall. Order whatever you want to eat, as long as he could cook it, as long as he was willing to cook it. Indeed, he was an arrogant chef. Because of the remote location and the restaurant's small space, even if he opened the door, no one would come in. On the other side, the Black Dragon King was like a chicken thief, holding the invitations as he came to Xianyuan Xiaohui's nameless restaurant. As soon as the Black Dragon King entered the restaurant, he was stopped by the sharp-eyed Xianyuan Xian. "Who is it?" Xianyuan Xian shouted. His eyes were full of vigilance toward the sneaky Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King laughed awkwardly. "I'm looking for your brother. There are many people looking for my brother. Who do you think you are?" Xianyuan Xian said. Since her brother had become the Heaven Chief, more and more people came to look for her brother. Some came to congratulate him, some came to rope him in, and some just wanted to bask in happiness. Who did he think he was? The Black Dragon King almost choked on his saliva. He didn't want to talk nonsense with this big-breasted, brainless woman. He took out the invitation and handed it to Xianyuan Xian. "This is the invitation that Bufong, my little friend, asked me to give you. Take it." Xianyuan Xian received the invitation with a suspicious face. Seeing the crooked handwriting, his brows arched. "An invitation. The opening of the Heaven Chief Restaurant. Please come." You mean Bufong wants to open a restaurant and invited my brother? Xin Yuan Xian asked, waving the invitation. Yes, but I don't think you were invited, the Black Dragon King said honestly. Xin Yuan Xian rolled his eyes. This guy? He said that he would take the Heaven Chief examination in 3 days. Instead of practicing his cooking skills, he is holding an opening ceremony? Have you already given up on yourself? The Black Dragon King didn't say anything. He only had 2 invitations left in his hand, so he ran away dejectedly. He still needed a hand over the invitations to the other 2. Xin Yuan Xian looked at the back of the Black Dragon King as he left. He patted the invitation and curled his lips. The handwriting on this invitation is so ugly. In the Heaven Chief restaurant, Bufong sneezed. He looked around expressionlessly, feeling a little confused. Then he stood up, stepped into the kitchen, and began to prepare the dishes for the opening ceremony. For the opening ceremony, according to the system's requirements, he needed to make good dishes to let the diners feel the restaurant's heritage. And Bufong wanted to give Xin Yuan Xiaohui and the others a big surprise. Chapter 970. The Black Dragon King returned with a dark face. After delivering the invitation to Xin Yuan Xiaohui, he hurried to the Heaven Chief Hall. In there, he felt really uncomfortable. Everyone looked at him with a strange look in their eyes. As a moving ingredient, the Black Dragon King felt his little heart palpitating unceasingly. Fortunately, the invitation was delivered successfully. As soon as he returned to the restaurant, the Black Dragon King felt as though his entire body was about to collapse. His black robe was lifted, and he slumped on the ground. Hua was sitting by Lord Go, absorbing the spirit energy of heaven and earth to cultivate. The spirit energy of heaven and earth in the Heaven Chief realm was much thicker than in the Hidden Dragon continent. That was why Hua's cultivation base had been increasing rapidly recently. Daughter, come here and give your father a hug. Your father needs some psychological comfort, the Black Dragon King shouted to Hua, who was in the distance. Hua was a little bewildered. Then, she turned around and hugged Lord Go's thigh. The Black Dragon King pursed his lips. He couldn't help but raise his hand to cover his mouth. He felt as though an invisible arrow had pierced his chest. That damn mangy dog! How dare you seduce my daughter? In the kitchen, Bufong seemed to have heard the Black Dragon King's movement. Then, he slowly walked out of the kitchen. Bufong wore a mask, revealing only his eyes. The vermilion robe on his body was sparkling with radiance. You're back? You finished delivering the invitations, right? Bufong asked the Black Dragon King. However, the Black Dragon King replied to him with a resentful gaze, as though he was looking at a young wife. This gaze made Bufong's hair stand on end. If you have something to say, just say it. We're on the same side, Bufong said. Bufong, my little friend, this Dragon King just wants to quietly be a handsome man in this restaurant. In the future, don't ask this Dragon King for this kind of public job, the Black Dragon King said sincerely. Bufong's brows arched, glancing at the Black Dragon King's bald head. Quietly be a bald head. Well, there shouldn't be any more invitations in the future anyway. You came back just in time. I'm experimenting with a new dish. You could try it later, Bufong said. After that, he turned around and returned to the kitchen. There's food? When the Black Dragon King heard Bufong's words, his eyes immediately lit up. He crawled up from the ground and sat on the chair. The dining tables in the restaurant were arranged in a circle, facing the kitchen. Although he couldn't see what was going on in the kitchen, the Black Dragon King was looking forward to it. This kind of arrangement is not bad. Rubbing his bald head, the Black Dragon King felt a little expectant. Little friend, Bufong's new dish. Hades Era walked down the stairs with a spicy strip in his mouth. He happened to see the Black Dragon King sitting at the dining table with a face full of anticipation. Hades Era's eyes immediately lit up. Old Black, what are you doing? The Black Dragon King glanced at Hades Era and said, Nothing much. I'm just waiting to eat. My little friend Bufong is preparing to let me taste a new dish. A new dish? Hades Era's eyes instantly lit up. A new dish? Interesting. I happen to have nothing to do, so I will accompany you to taste it. Are you surprised? After Hades' era finished speaking, he sat beside the Black Dragon King, facing the direction of the kitchen. They were all looking forward to Bu Fong's new dish. A wave of fragrance wafted out from the kitchen, causing the Black Dragon King and Hades' era to squint their eyes. The fragrance of a new dish. No, why does it feel so familiar? Hades' era squinted his eyes and wrinkled his nose. Familiar? I'm not familiar, but it smells so good. The Black Dragon King also squinted his eyes and wrinkled his nose. No, it's very familiar. It seems to be the smell of papillion meat. Dragon meat? The Black Dragon King's brows twitched. Dinkling. The metal bell hanging on the kitchen's door frame instantly rang. Bu Fong walked out of the kitchen with a piping hot dish in his hand. Steam billowed from it. A new dish. Hades' era's eyes widened. The Black Dragon King was also puzzled. This is black as sweet and sour papillion ribs to thank him for his claws just now, said Bu Fong, who was wearing a mask. Hades' era's face darkened. It was his 10 spicy strips. When Lord Go smelled the sweet and sour ribs, he instantly woke up. He crawled up and laid on the table. Bu Fong placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Lord Go. Lord Go snorted, then started to eat. Wait for the new dish. It will be ready soon, Bu Fong said. Then he went back to the kitchen. Munch, munch. In the quiet restaurant, only the sound of breathing could be heard. Only the sound of Lord Go munching on the sweet and sour ribs could be heard. That sound was hearty, filled with the happiness of being conquered by delicious food. Hades' era took out the last spicy strip. His hand trembled as he stuffed the spicy strip into his mouth, then started to move it in and out. After a while, ring, ring. The metal bell hanging on the kitchen door rang again, which meant that Bu Fong had come out with a new dish. The Black Dragon King and Hades' era instantly looked at the skinny figure walking out of the kitchen with a face full of expectation. A wave of thick smell slowly wafted out of the kitchen. Blurg! The Black Dragon King's face instantly froze. His widened nostrils shrank the moment he smelled the smell, and his face darkened. He couldn't help but let out a vomiting sound. Hades' era's face was lifeless. In the next instant, he covered his nose, his face darkening. Bu Fong, young man, is this a new dish? Isn't this King's stinky tofu? Bu Fong, who was wearing a mask, walked out with a plate of stinky tofu. He placed the stinky tofu in front of the Black Dragon King and Hades' era. No, this is a new and improved version of the stinky tofu. Not only has the stench been upgraded, but the taste has also been upgraded. It's for the opening ceremony tomorrow, Bu Fong said, his face expressionless. It's still King stinky tofu. Hades' era screamed indignantly. Why did that mangy dog get to eat the delicious sweet and sour dragon ribs, while he had to eat this King stinky tofu? No, this isn't an ordinary stinky tofu. Try it, and you will know, Bu Fong said. The Black Dragon King and Hades' era exchanged looks, seeing the despair in each other's eyes. Picking up the chopsticks, the Black Dragon King's mouth trembled. If he knew that the new dish was this thing, the Black Dragon King wouldn't have foolishly waited at the table. He had never eaten stinky tofu before, so he didn't understand how magical it was. Hades' era had eaten stinky tofu before, but this time the stinky tofu was even more stinky. The Black Dragon King was a little frightened. Compared to Hades' era, he was even more frightened. All of a sudden, he turned his head and looked at Hades' era, who picked up a black square piece of stinky tofu with a helpless face. His teeth were chattering. Then, the Nether King opened his mouth wide, and the pitch-black square piece of stinky tofu, which was emitting a thick stench, was stuffed into his mouth by the Nether King. Gulp! The Black Dragon King swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Why did he feel that it had such a heavy taste? Munch! Munch! Hades' era began to chew. The sound of chewing lingered in the Black Dragon King's ears, making him feel as though he was listening to a piece of despairing music. How is it? Bu Fong looked at Hades' era, asking expectantly. The taste is more delicious, and the spirit energy is more abundant. However, the texture isn't much different from the previous stinky tofu. There's still some differences. The stench is thicker. Hades Era grinned. His teeth were stained with black pieces of stinky tofu as he spoke. Bufong nodded. It seemed he hadn't improved enough. You guys eat first. I'm going to improve it, Bufong said. Then, he went back to the kitchen. The Black Dragon King looked at Bufong, then at Hades Era, who had picked up the second piece of stinky tofu. He felt as though his world was collapsing. This sh*t-like thing. How could Hades Era eat it so happily? Do you want a piece? Hades Era asked the Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King opened his mouth, hesitating. Hades Era's eyes focused. A moment later, his chopsticks moved, picking up a piece of stinky tofu and shoving it into the Black Dragon King's mouth. The Black Dragon King's entire body stiffened. The stench started to spread in his mouth. Tomorrow, Onurbu would use this dish to entertain the guests for his opening ceremony. The Black Dragon King could already feel the despair of those customers tomorrow. Tong Cheng's eyes were bloodshot, and he was panting hard. He was holding a jade talisman in his hand. It was the information his subordinate in the Heaven Chief Hall had sent him. That mortal chef is going to hold an opening ceremony tomorrow. He has invited Xianyuan Xiaohui and the others. Tong Cheng crushed the jade talisman. His chest was panting hard, and the corners of his mouth rose. Opening ceremony? What nonsense! The Heaven Chief's exam is around the corner, and he chose to open a restaurant. That mortal is courting death. I want to see what kind of restaurant he's going to open. 3 days later, if Bufong didn't pass the Heaven Chief's exam and he wanted to deal with Bufong, the people in the Heaven Chief Hall wouldn't stop him. At that time, he would let that mortal understand the consequences of offending him, Tong Cheng. Moreover, that magical earth immortal puppet would become Tong Cheng's. The next day, the sky had just brightened. Xianyuan Xiaohui took off her chef robe and changed into casual clothes. She had received an invitation to attend Bufong's opening ceremony. After closing the restaurant's door, Xianyuan Xian, who was wearing a tight-fitting dress, showed off her exquisite and well-proportioned body. Her voluptuous body was really eye-catching. Brother, that mortal will attend the Heaven Chief's exam in 2 days, but he chose to open his restaurant now. Is he stupid? Xianyuan Xian held Xianyuan Xiaohui's arm as she asked. Although Onurbu is from the mortal world, he always gives people a mysterious feeling. Perhaps he really has some trump cards, Xianyuan Xiaohui said after thinking for a while. Following the address on the invitation, the two of them walked slowly. The new Heaven Chief, Xianyuan Xiaohui, attracted many people's attention as soon as they walked out of the door. It wasn't just because of Xianyuan Xian's pretty face and voluptuous body. It was mainly because of Xianyuan Xiaohui's identity as the Heaven Chief. Many people followed behind them, wanting to see what they were going to do. Miss Mu and Manager Chun, are you also going to attend Bufong's opening ceremony? On the way, Xianyuan Xiaohui met the meticulous Manager Chun and Mu Luer, who had a smile on her face. Manager Chen's face was a little ugly as he nodded his head. This Bufong really doesn't take the Heaven Chief's exam seriously. The exam is just around the corner, and he actually chose to open his restaurant. This old man has taken so many Heaven Chief's exams, but I have never seen such a reckless young man. Manager Chun was obviously a little angry about Bufong's opening ceremony, so he coldly snorted. Perhaps Bufong has a card up his sleeve? Mu Luer gently smiled. Young Pavilion Master, don't speak up for that kid. It's not right to open his restaurant at this time. Manager Chun said with a cold face. This old man wants to see what that kid is going to do. The four of them talked as they walked, and behind them, there were many onlookers. Soon, they arrived at the address described in the invitation. Looking at the small and remote restaurant in front of them, the four of them looked at each other in dismay, their faces filled with confusion. Looking at each other, the four of them felt a little helpless. They pushed open the restaurant's door and stepped inside. However, as soon as the door was pushed open, a thick smell assailed their nostrils. The four of them instantly had an earth-shattering change. Chapter 971. This smell. Did they come to the wrong door? Was this a restaurant and not a toilet? Everyone pushed open the restaurant's door. They weren't mentally prepared at all. When they smelled the thick smell, their minds suffered a huge blow. The muscles all over Xianyuan Xiaohui's body trembled, and he took a step back. Xianyuan Xian, who was standing beside him, couldn't bear it. He directly covered his mouth. Mu Luer was fine, but the gentle smile on her face froze. She awkwardly picked up the invitation in her hand to check if she had come to the wrong place. Manager Chen's dark face became even darker. He let out a long sigh, and the veins on his forehead bulged. It was as though he was a barrel of gunpowder that was about to be ignited. As they stepped into the restaurant, the onlookers following behind them suddenly looked at this restaurant in a corner of the city in shock. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. This restaurant, was it opened by a hidden heaven chief? It actually attracted the newly promoted heaven chief, Xianyuan Xiaohui, and the big shots of the heaven chief hall. When the news spread, many people narrowed their eyes, and a light flashed in their eyes. Then, the news spread like wildfire, and many people gathered in front of the restaurant. Did you see that? It's a restaurant with a name. Oh my God, when did such a restaurant open in this remote corner? It really has a name. Unbelievable. A restaurant with a name. Could it be that the Heaven Chief really opened it? The Heaven Chief's restaurant is actually so close to us. It's really unbelievable. The onlookers excitedly discussed among themselves. They couldn't wait to enter the restaurant and taste the delicacies. However, many people were hesitant. When Xianyuan Xiaohui and the others stepped into the restaurant, they had to endure it with great patience. They entered the restaurant and began to look around. The restaurant's layout made their eyes light up. It was different from ordinary restaurants. This restaurant was very small, but the tables were arranged in a circle, blocking the kitchen door. This kind of arrangement was very shocking at first glance. Xianyuan Xiaohui held his breath and slowly walked around the restaurant. Soon, his eyes lit up when he saw the menu board hanging on the wall. Hot pot, barbecue, blood lobster. Seems like this is the right place. I've eaten blood lobster before. It's very fragrant, spicy, and delicious, Xianyuan Xiaohui said. However, compared to the fragrance of the spicy blood lobsters, there was only a stench in the restaurant. Is this the smell a chef should make? The stench was overwhelming. It's an insult to the identity of a chef. Manager Chan was enraged to the extreme, and his face turned extremely gloomy. A chef should cook fragrant dishes to stimulate the appetite of the customers. Creating this kind of stench was an insult to the profession of a chef. Mu Luer didn't express her opinion. Xianyuan Xian wanted to say something, but she was too nauseous to speak. She was afraid that if she opened her mouth, she wouldn't be able to stop herself from vomiting. There were two figures sitting at the dining table. One was a handsome young man with a little melancholy expression. He was holding a pair of chopsticks, picking at the food on the plate. The other was a bald man, who looked fierce. They recognized this bald man. He was the guy who had given them the invitation. At this moment, the handsome young man and the bald man had a plate in front of them. The plate was filled with ingredients, which were pitch-black cubes stacked on top of each other. On top of them was a viscous gravy. The bald man and the handsome young man used their chopsticks to pick up the black cubes that were stained with the viscous gravy and stuff them into their mouths. After stuffing them into their mouths, they started to chew. The chomping sounds resounded in their ears. The faces of Xianyuan Xiaohui and the other three instantly changed. This was because they realized that the stench was coming from those cubes. Those cubes that looked like shit. Are they eating shit? Xianyuan Xian's face was filled with fear as he looked at Hades' era and the Black Dragon King. Xianyuan Xiaohui smacked his lips, his gaze a little solemn. As a chef, what he saw was different from Xianyuan Xian. What he saw was the look of enjoyment on Hades' era and the Black Dragon King's faces after eating the black cubes. This dish made them feel happy both physically and mentally. Naturally, Manager Chun felt the same way. As a judge of the Heaven Chief, he naturally knew what the most important thing about a dish was. That was to make the diners feel happy. The corners of Mu Luer's mouth curved into a smile. Indeed, Bufong was Bufong. This mortal chef always did unexpected things. Ding, ding, ding. The bell on the door frame of the kitchen rang. Bufong walked out of the kitchen. He wiped the water stains on his hands and slowly walked out. His expression was calm. The stench in the air did not affect him in the slightest. When Bufong saw Xianyuan Shahui's group of 4 standing at the door, he instantly raised his brows. "You're here. Sit here," Bufong said to the 4 of them. A smile instantly appeared on Xianyuan Shahui's face. "Congratulations, Brother Bufong, on the opening of your new restaurant." Then, Xianyuan Shahui brought Xianyuan Xian to the dining table, sitting beside Hades Era. Everyone sat down, facing the direction of the kitchen. Smelling the stench at such a close distance, it really made people doubt their lives. Even with Xianyuan Shahui's composure, she couldn't help but furrow her brows. It was hard to imagine how the 2 of them swallowed it down. Manager Chen's face was gloomy as he sat down. Glancing at Bufong, he coldly snorted. He was very dissatisfied with Bufong. He felt that Bufong should be training hard for the Heaven Chief's exam, and not come here to create some weird opening ceremony. Mu Luer, on the other hand, smiled and congratulated him. "You guys wait." Bufong looked at the 4 of them sitting down, and the corners of his mouth rose. Then, he turned around and entered the kitchen. The 4 of them looked at each other in dismay. Suddenly, their expressions changed. Could it be that Bufong wanted to bring out that stinky dish for them to eat? Could they refuse? Ding, 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 ding. The bell rang again, and Bufong walked out of the kitchen. Indeed, their guess was right. The dish was placed in front of them. It was the jet-black tofu cubes with the jet-black gravy flowing on them. A dish that stinks to the heavens. Bufong looked at the 4 of them. He placed his hand on the dining table and slightly bent his body, saying, "This is the opening ceremony's dish. Please try it. There's no need to be polite. Who the F asterisk CK is being polite with you? Can I not eat it?" Xianyuan Xian's eyes revealed a look of fear, and he covered his mouth. The others also had awkward expressions on their faces. "That Honorbu, believe me, don't be fooled by appearances. Maybe what you see and hear isn't the truth. You have to see through the appearance to see the essence," Bufong said. The 4 of them were stunned. His words made sense, and they were actually speechless. Mu Luer's expression was a little strange. She didn't say anything, and she took the lead to pick up her chopsticks, picking up a piece of tofu. The sticky black gravy flowed down the tofu cubes. Mu Luer swallowed a mouthful of saliva, then opened her mouth wide and stuffed the tofu cubes into it. Xianyuan Xian's eyes widened, and his face was filled with disbelief. "Huh." Mu Luer originally thought that what entered her mouth would be a disgusting stench, but unexpectedly, it was smooth and tender. In an instant, it burst out with an exquisite fragrance. It was really fragrant. This fragrance seemed to spread in her mouth, and in an instant, it flowed through her whole body. A feeling that made her spirit become clear surged, as if it had cleansed her soul. As she chewed, the soft tofu was crushed, and the fragrant tofu juice flowed in her mouth, adhering to her tongue. The taste was excellent. Good. Delicious. Mu Luer said in a daze. In the next instant, her eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at Bufong, full of surprise. This mortal chef was really not ordinary. This stinky tofu actually had the effect of cleansing one's soul. At this moment, her spirit sea seemed to become more condensed. It should be known that for divine spirit realm experts, the effect of condensing their spirit sea was too great. Not only would it increase their mental force, but it could also make their cultivation base more solid. Xianyuan Shahui's eyes narrowed. Mu Luer's expression was beyond his expectations. Could it be, making a decision in his heart, he also picked up a piece of stinky tofu and stuffed it into his mouth. As he chewed faster and faster, he finally understood the surprise in Mu Luer's eyes. Bufong always brought people unexpected delicacies. This kind of innovation, breaking the norm, amazed him. Although he was the new heaven chief, in terms of innovation, he knew that he wasn't as good as Bufong. He didn't know why, but he suddenly believed that Bufong would definitely surprise everyone in the Heaven Chief test. At the entrance of the Heaven Chief restaurant, at this moment, a group of people had gathered in front of the restaurant. They were all waiting for Xianyuan Xiaohui and the others to come out of the restaurant. All of a sudden, the crowd cried out in alarm. The sound of hooves resounded. In the next instant, a large group of people arrived. Tong Cheng's face was gloomy as he dismounted from his Thunder Dragon horse. He clasped his hands, coldly glancing at the group of people around him. Then his eyes fell on the small restaurant. Is that the Mortal Chef's restaurant? Hee. It's really trash. It's narrow and small. Tong Cheng sneered. At this moment, the onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. It's Tong Cheng, the aristocratic Tong family's heaven chief. Another heaven chief has appeared. This restaurant doesn't have an ordinary background. I'm really curious who the owner of this restaurant is. The onlookers became restless once again, chattering nonstop. The excitement on their faces became thicker. Tong Cheng didn't pay attention to the crowd. He clasped his hands, coldly turning around to enter the restaurant. He was eager to see how surprised that mortal would be when he saw him. That mortal wouldn't expect him to come back. At that time, he could humiliate that mortal creak. His two subordinates helped him push open the restaurant's door. Tong Cheng clasped his hands, stepping into the restaurant. The two subordinates glanced at each other before stepping inside as well. As soon as they entered the restaurant, Tong Cheng furrowed his brows. His nose twitched, and then his face suddenly darkened. What's that smell? Why is it so smelly? Tong Cheng was bewildered. As he smelled the stench, his stomach churned. His two subordinates couldn't stand it anymore. They covered their mouths. Suddenly, their eyes focused on the people sitting at the table in the distance. Xianyuan Xiaohui, Manager Chun, and Mu Luer. They were happily eating stinky food. Were they eating sh*t? Tong Cheng was bewildered. Xianyuan Xiaohui picked up a piece of stinky tofu with her chopsticks. She happily stuffed it into her mouth and chewed. As if she sensed something, she turned to look at the door and saw Tong Cheng standing there. Tong Cheng was bewildered for a moment. Then he grinned. Brother Tong Cheng, you're here. Come and sit. Tong Cheng looked at Xianyuan Xiaohui, who was grinning at him. Her mouth was stained with black tofu. He sucked in a breath of cold air. The stench instantly flooded his nostrils. He, who was obsessed with cleanliness, collapsed in an instant. Blurg, this smell. I can't stand it anymore. Tong Cheng's face looked as though he had swallowed sh*t. He forgot about humiliating Bufong. He turned around, pushed the door open, and stormed out of the restaurant. His two subordinates also stormed out of the restaurant. Blurg. As Tong Cheng stormed out of the restaurant, he couldn't stand it anymore. He vomited. Damn it. That mortal must have prepared well to disgust me. Tong Cheng was so angry that he felt like he was going crazy. All of a sudden, Tong Cheng had a bad premonition. He turned around and saw his two subordinates storming out of the restaurant. Their eyes widened and their mouths bulged. Shut up, Tong Cheng shouted. However, Tong Cheng felt as though the sky was about to collapse. The onlookers outside the restaurant were shocked as they watched the scene unfold in front of the restaurant. My God, what happened? So explosive. Chapter 972. At this moment, the atmosphere became very quiet. Everyone was dumbstruck as they stared blankly at the scene that happened in front of the restaurant. It was a scene that made everyone feel extremely awkward. Tong Cheng, the young master of the Tong family and the genius immortal chef of the immortal city, was now covered in vomit by his subordinate. This situation was too shocking. No one had expected it. What had happened in that restaurant, after all? After the onlookers got a hold of themselves, they were very excited. They wanted to know what had happened in the restaurant. Tong Cheng's distressed appearance had made their hearts full of curiosity. Tong Cheng's eyes were dull, and his entire body was shaking. He was a neat freak. As a heaven chief, he was a neat freak. His kitchen knife was always cleaned, and his clothes were also very clean. He needed to use the heaven and earth obsidian flame to sterilize his clothes. He was a very clean person. However, he had miscalculated this time. His entire body was shaking. He had come to this restaurant to mock that mortal and disturb his thoughts, so that he wouldn't be able to perform well in the Heaven Chief's assessment in 2 days. At that time, he would lose the protection of the Heaven Chief Hall, and that mortal would be at his mercy. However, was this AF Asterisk King restaurant? Pushing the door open, Tong Chung thought that he had entered a toilet. The stench it emitted suffocated him. The most important thing was that Xianyuan Xiaohui had said, "Come on, let's eat together. Eat, your sister." He was the young master of the Tong family, the genius Heaven Chief. How could he eat SH asterisk T? Get lost. All of you get lost. Tong Cheng's eyes immediately turned red as he furiously cried out. Terrifying true immortal realm aura burst out from his body, blowing away all the filth on his body. His body seemed to turn into a lightning bolt, disappearing from his spot. The onlookers tried to hold back their laughter. Eventually, they couldn't hold back their curiosity. They pushed the door open to see what had happened in the restaurant. However, shortly after, the onlookers were dumbstruck. The restaurant was filled with a stench that could make people go to heaven. At the table, the newly promoted Heaven Chief, Xianyuan Xiaohui, was eating the stinky food with relish. Oh my God! The onlooker's worldview was collapsing. He stuffed the last piece of stinky tofu into his mouth. Xianyuan Xiaohui let out a long sigh of relief. Jingle, 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 jingle of a bell rang out. Bu Fong walked out of the kitchen. He looked at Xianyuan Xiaohui indifferently, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Are you done? Owner Bu's dishes are really special. They smell so bad, but they taste so delicious. It's as if they have magic. Xianyuan Xiaohui used a clean cloth to wipe her mouth, wiping away the black soup stains on her lips. Xianyuan Xian looked at Bu Fong with a complicated gaze. Why did he make such a delicious dish so smelly? Didn't Bu Fong know that it was easy to lose customers this way? Some people couldn't stand the stench. Today is the opening ceremony of my restaurant, and I want to thank everyone for coming. Therefore, the next dish will be free for everyone to taste. I hope everyone can enjoy it. Bu Fong said. The stinky tofu was just an appetizer. It was just the first shot to make the restaurant famous. Although it was located in a remote area, the stinky tofu had made a name for itself, and other delicacies were used to attract customers. This way, the restaurant would soon be able to gain a foothold in this immortal city. This time, it won't be another stinky dish, right? Manager Chen stroked his beard, looking at Bu Fong as he snorted. Although he had to admit that the stinky tofu was delicious, the problem was the smell was really bad. No, wait a minute. Bu Fong shook his head, saying. Then, Bu Fong returned to the kitchen. Hades' era had already eaten and drank to his heart's content. At this moment, he was holding a spicy strip in his mouth, looking at Xianyuan Xiaohui and the others calmly. Hades' era's handsome face attracted many people's gazes. After all, it was pleasing to the eye. Mu Luer and Xianyuan Xian were also attracted. After the Black Dragon King ate and drank to his heart's content, he smiled and rubbed his bald head. Then, he ran to the side to play with his daughter. At this moment, Xianyuan Xiaohui and the others were in the mood to look at the situation in the restaurant. They saw Lord Go, who was lying on the ground in the distance, and Hua, who was hugging Lord Go's thigh. Bu Fong also raised a dog. In the Heaven Chief realm, there were many chefs who raised spirit pets, so they weren't too surprised. Ring, ring, ring. The metal bell hanging on the door frame of the kitchen rang again. This bell was provided by the system, and its sound was crisp and sweet, as though it had a soul-cleansing effect. It was somewhat similar to the effect of the stinky tofu. Bu Fong took out a copper pot and placed it in front of the four of them. Bu Fong indifferently glanced at them. Mu Luer's eyes lit up. I know. Is Owner Bu planning to make a hot pot? Mu Luer had eaten Bu Fong's hot pot before, so naturally, she couldn't resist the delicious taste. Eating hot pot with many people was a very happy thing. Hot pot. Xianyuan Xiaohui and Xianyuan Xian were slightly stunned. Manager Chen's face darkened. So, the hot pot that has caused an uproar outside the immortal city is the product of Owner Boo's research. As expected, Owner Boo's innovation in dishes is something that I can't compare to. Xianyuan Xiaohui sighed. Xianyuan Xian looked at Bu Fong, and his eyes shone even brighter. It was entirely possible for Bu Fong to become the Heaven Chief. According to Xianyuan Xian's plan, if he wanted to woo the Heaven Chief, he had to do it before he became the Heaven Chief. Don't forget your friends when you become rich and powerful. Thus, Xianyuan Xian's heart was very restless. The way he looked at Bu Fong made Bu Fong's hair stand on end. Opening his mouth, Bu Fong spat out a dark golden flame. When Xianyuan Xiaohui saw this, the corners of his mouth suddenly curled into a smile. Owner Bu, take back your heaven and earth obsidian flame. What? Bu Fong was bewildered. If you use my immortal flame, perhaps the taste of the hot pot can be improved, said Xianyuan Xiaohui. Immortal flame? Bu Fong was silent for a while. Then, he waved his hand, making the heaven and earth obsidian flame in the hot pot disappear. You do it, Bu Fong said. The corners of Xianyuan Xiaohui's mouth curled up. Then, with a shake of his hand, true energy circulated. As Xianyuan Xiaohui could pass the Heaven Chief's test, his cultivation base was not weak. In fact, no one who could become the Heaven Chief was weak. To condense the immortal energy in the dish, one needed a very strong mental force, as well as physical strength. Any deficiency would make the previous effort to condense the immortal energy go to waste. Boom! A glass-like light emerged from Xianyuan Xiaohui's palm. It was a flame that looked like a chrysanthemum. It was dark green, as resplendent as glass. As soon as the flame appeared, the temperature in the restaurant soared. Terrifying heat waves constantly rushed out. Bu Fong's eyes shrank, staring at the flame in Xianyuan Xiaohui's hand. This is an immortal flame? Bu Fong exhaled, calming the shock in his heart as he asked. That's right. The immortal flame is a flame that every chef yearns for. Even an immortal chef yearns for it. Xianyuan Xiaohui said seriously. Coincidentally, Xianyuan Xiaohui had obtained the glaze immortal flame by chance, which helped his cooking skills soar and eventually become the Heaven Chief. He was very grateful and loved this immortal flame. It's really good, Bu Fong said seriously. As soon as the immortal flame appeared, the dark gold flame in his body, which was the fusion of two heaven and earth obsidian flames, shivered. Boom! With a flick of his finger, the glass-like flame entered the copper wok, burning fiercely. Inside the wok, the red chili soup began to boil. The air was filled with a thick aroma and spicy smell. The roasting of the immortal flame could perfectly release the flavor of the ingredients. Bu Fong felt that he should find an immortal flame. The heaven and earth obsidian flames couldn't keep up with his current level. Taking a deep look at the glass-like flame, Bu Fong turned around and stepped into the kitchen. Shortly after, he brought out all the ingredients he had prepared. Different from the stinky tofu, this spicy hot pot was fragrant and spicy, which made the four of them eat to their heart's content. In the heaven and earth farmland, Bu Fong's mind flickered, and he appeared on the vast plain. The wind blew, and the plump ears of wheat rustled as they bumped into each other. The dark green grass swayed in the wind, and layers of green waves surged past. The air was filled with a thick, fruity aroma, which was the fragrance of ripe spirit fruits. Bu Fong clasped his hands, walking in the heaven and earth farmland. This time, he came to the heaven and earth farmland to prepare ingredients for the Heaven Chief test. Originally, Bu Fong wanted to cook the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup for the Heaven Chief test. However, yesterday, Xianyuan Xiaohui had told him that the Buddha jumps over the wall soup required a lot of ingredients, and it was hard to condense a wisp of immortal energy. The so-called immortal energy was actually the origin energy of the ingredients. Each ingredient had its own origin, and as long as the origin energy was extracted and condensed, it would become immortal energy. The immortal energy condensed by the origin energy could vividly reflect the deliciousness of the dish. The more origin energy one could extract, the more immortal energy one could condense. However, this was very difficult. Since the origin energy in the ingredients was already small, the more condensed it was, the higher the mental force required of the chef. This was also the reason why no one in the Heaven Chief was weak. Without enough cultivation base, they couldn't extract the origin energy of the ingredients. The higher the grade of the ingredients, the more origin energy it contained. This was also why the ingredients grown on the Heaven Tree were often the targets of the Heaven Chief's competition. There were too many ingredients for the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, and it was too difficult to condense immortal energy. Thus, Bufang wanted to change to another dish. Yesterday, he had completed the system's temporary task and received the reward, the glazed soup dumplings. This time, the system rewarded him with a high-grade dish. After checking the cooking method, Bufang understood the level of the glazed soup dumplings. It was definitely a dish that the Heaven Chief could cook. According to the system's description, the requirement to make the glazed soup dumplings was to condense a wisp of immortal energy. Glazed soup dumplings, using flour made from guanine tears rice, 5 kinds of spirit beast meat, and fresh cabbage as the fillings. Through strict kneading techniques and the pleated stuffing method, the glazed soup dumplings are made. This was the system's introduction to Bufang. This was the new dish provided by the system, and it made Bufang very excited. Guanine tears rice was the ingredient Bufang grew in the heaven and earth farmland. 5 kinds of spirit beast meat, blood lobster meat, demon frog meat, papillion meat, octopus tentacles, and 80s drumstick meat. It was almost perfect. Although it wasn't the best combination of spirit beast meat, Bufang believed that the glazed soup dumplings he made would definitely help him become the Heaven Chief. The most important thing was the cooking method. The cooking method of the glazed soup dumplings was very difficult. When Johan-san sensed Bufang's arrival, he immediately smiled and tried to get close to Bufang. According to Bufang's request, Johan-san prepared all the ingredients Bufang needed and gave them to Bufang. After chatting for a while, Bufang left the heaven and earth farmland. Bufang promised Johan-san that he would find more spirit vegetables, spirit herbs, and spirit beasts to put in the heaven and earth farmland. Johan-san had long regarded the heaven and earth farmland as his home. In this place, he could relax, which made him very satisfied. And when he was free, he would help Bufang develop the heaven and earth farmland. As Bufang's cultivation base increased, the heaven and earth farmland also expanded. In fact, every time Bufang walked out of the restaurant and saw the incomparably huge trunk of the heaven tree in the inner circle of the immortal city, he always had the urge to move the Heaven Chief into the heaven and earth farmland. If the heaven tree was moved into the heaven and earth farmland, it would change the heaven and earth farmland completely. Unfortunately, Bufang could only think about it. With his cultivation base, he couldn't even move the trunk of the heaven tree. The night passed. The next day, the sky was clear. The sun shone, and the sky was clear for thousands of miles. The air was filled with a rich fragrance. Bufang pushed open the door of the Heaven Chief restaurant, walking out. He twisted his neck, looking in the direction of the Heaven Chief hall. His vermilion robe fluttered, and his untied hair fluttered in the wind. 3 days had passed. Today was the day of the Heaven Chief's test. Bufang's heart was filled with anticipation. At the entrance of the Heaven Chief hall, people were surging. Everyone knew that today was the day of the test that the mortal chef and Tong Chung had agreed on with the Heaven Chief. If that mortal could become the Heaven Chief, he would be safe and sound. If that mortal couldn't become the Heaven Chief, the Tong family's Tong Chung would never let him go. Actually, this was a mortal's test, and it concerned his life. That mortal had no way out. In the distance, a sandstorm rolled. A thin figure, clasping his hands, slowly walked over. Chapter 973. Brother, are you going out? Xianyuan Xian couldn't help but ask Xianyuan Xiaohui, who had taken off her chef robe and walked out of the restaurant in casual clothes. Xianyuan Xiaohui folded her sleeves meticulously, smiling at Xianyuan Xian. Today is the day Owner Bu will take the Heaven Chief exam. Of course, I have to go and see. Do you want to go with me? Asked Xianyuan Xiaohui. The Heaven Chief exam? Brother, do you think Bu Fong has a chance to become the Heaven Chief? Xianyuan Xian was silent for a while. Then he lifted his head and asked. Xianyuan Xian's question made Xianyuan Xiaohui silent for a while. It's difficult. First of all, Owner Bu's cultivation base hasn't reached the true immortal realm, which is a shackle. Moreover, Owner Bu doesn't have an immortal flame, which is another shackle. If he has one of the two, the chance of Owner Bu becoming the Heaven Chief will be much higher. However, if he doesn't have either, the possibility of Owner Bu becoming the Heaven Chief is only 1%. Xianyuan Xiaohui still wore a smile on his face as he spoke. It wasn't easy to become the Heaven Chief. It required a lot of accumulation, enough strength, and all kinds of opportunities. The position of the Heaven Chief in the Heaven Chief realm was so noble, so of course, there were reasons for it. However, Bu Fong had to become the Heaven Chief. If he couldn't become the Heaven Chief, Bu Fong wouldn't have any chance to avoid the Tong family's troubles. Tong Cheng was the veteran Heaven Chief, so he was very powerful. In front of Tong Cheng, even Shi Yin couldn't threaten him. He couldn't save Bu Fong. If he couldn't become the Heaven Chief, the Heaven Chief Hall wouldn't be able to save Bu Fong. All right, brother, I will go with you. Xianyuan Xian was silent for a while, but in the end, he still decided to go. The siblings closed the restaurant and walked toward the Heaven Chief Hall. At this moment, outside Heaven Chief Hall, everyone widened their eyes as they looked at the figure that was slowly approaching from afar. It was a skinny figure, and his vermilion robe fluttered in the wind. Bu Fong's face was expressionless as he clasped his hands behind his back and appeared under the gaze of the crowd. This mortal really came. How arrogant. Do you really think it's that easy to pass the exam with the Heaven Chief? Every Heaven Chief has gone through endless training and has accumulated a lot of experience and opportunities. How can mere mortals have the qualifications? The crowd discussed animatedly. They all expressed their disdain for Bu Fong and did not think highly of Bu Fong. Many people from the aristocratic families also came. Their gazes were a little playful. Regarding this mortal who dared to go against the Tong family, these aristocratic families somewhat admired Bu Fong's courage. The Tong family's status in the aristocratic family circle in Immortal City was still very high. There were many aristocratic families in Immortal City. Some were in their heyday, some were desolate, and some were mediocre. And the Tong family was one of those glorious aristocratic families. The Tong family, the Gongshu family, the Zhang family, and the Luo family were known as the top 4 families in Immortal City, second only to the City Lord's Mansion. In the City Lord's Mansion, the Mu family was also considered a big aristocratic family. In Immortal City, the aristocratic families ruled. A mere mortal dared to go against the aristocratic families. This was a provocation to the aristocratic families. Mu Luer had already appeared at the entrance of the Heaven Chief Hall. The experts of the Heaven Chief Hall had already surrounded the entrance, waiting for Bu Fong to appear. Regarding this mortal who had caused such a commotion in the Heaven Chief exam, everyone was a little curious. Bu Fong's face was very calm as he walked through the crowd. Everyone's eyes were different, each with a complicated expression. However, to Bu Fong, these complicated expressions couldn't shake his mind at all. You're here. Mu Luder smiled at Bu Fong. Her eyes were a little strange as she looked at Bu Fong with some expectations. Bu Fong nodded, his face expressionless. In fact, he felt that it was a little troublesome. They should have taken the exam together. Now, he had to come again. Come with me. Mu Luer was already used to Bu Fong's poker face. She nodded and led Bu Fong inside. The surrounding people couldn't help but clamor, following them. A group of people entered the room. Manager Chun had long been waiting for Bu Fong at the entrance of the Heaven Chief exam room. Previously, Manager Chun had been waiting for Xianyuan Xiaohui, and now he was waiting for Bu Fong. Are you ready? To tell you the truth, This time's Heaven Chief exam is related to your life. If you succeed, you can continue to live. But if you fail, you will suffer the wrath of the Tong family. Manager Chen stroked his beard as he looked at Bu Fong and said seriously. Regarding this mortal chef, Manager Chen felt that he couldn't see through him anymore. Especially after Manager Chen had tasted Bu Fong's dishes in his restaurant. His heart was filled with anticipation and suspicion. Perhaps this mortal could really perform a miracle. I'm ready. Let's finish this quickly. I'm in a hurry, Bu Fong said after thinking for a while. Manager Chen was stunned by his words. He glared at Bu Fong, then led Bu Fong into the room. With a creak, he pushed open the door of the room. The voice, which was filled with vicissitudes and ancientness, resounded. This assessment room was clearly quite old. The room for the Heaven Chief exam was a little bigger than the room for the special grade chef exam. Bu Fong strolled slowly, and soon he arrived at the stove in the center of the room. That stove looked simple and unadorned, as though it was made of special material. Bu Fong stood in front of the stove, feeling a sense of tranquility. Bu Fong was slightly bewildered. This stove seemed to be very powerful. System, have you seen other people's stoves? It can help a chef calm down. How good is that? Bu Fong said to the system in his heart. However, the system was silent for a long time. In the end, it didn't say anything. Apparently, it was too lazy to reply to Bu Fong. Bu Fong also thought that the system wouldn't reply. With its stingy nature, how could it give him a better stove? With his hands clasped behind his back, he stood in front of the stove and began to calm down. He began to summarize the steps for the next dish in his mind. Swish! In the audience stand, the audience swarmed in like flowing water. In just a short while, every seat was occupied. There were even no seats left. Some people even crouched in front of the audience stand, squeezing so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. An aristocratic family member crossed his legs, sitting in the audience stand with a smile on his face, watching Bu Fong on the stage. If Bu Fong could become the Heaven Chief, this mortal's value would be extraordinary. Thus, many aristocratic families were very concerned about this exam. Xianyuan Xiaohui and Xianyuan Xian also arrived. Because of Xianyuan Xiaohui's identity, they had a seat in the audience stand. Soon, everyone's eyes focused on Bu Fong, who was standing in the middle of the battlefield. They were looking forward to what dish Bu Fong would use to become the Heaven Chief. Under their gazes, Bu Fong had already begun to take out the ingredients one by one. Flour, all kinds of meat, and a fresh cabbage. That's all. In the audience stand, everyone wore a bewildered face. Just these ingredients? Was there nothing else? What was Bu Fong planning to do? Steam buns. As if they had guessed what dish Bu Fong was going to cook, the audience began to chatter. As the audience in the Heaven Chief realm, although some of them weren't chefs, they still knew how to cook. This thing called steam buns. Can he become the Heaven Chief? I don't think he's going to cook steam buns. If he's going to make steam buns, I'll eat sh*t. How can steam buns become the Heaven Chief? This kind of low-end dish. How can he become the Heaven Chief? This mortal must be crazy. Bu Fong had not even started cooking, and the onlookers had already labeled him a failure. They thought that Bu Fong was doomed to fail. Xianyuan Xiaohui also furrowed her brows. Flour, meat, vegetables. These ingredients were taken out. It seemed owner Bu really wanted to make steamed buns. However, steamed buns weren't difficult at all. How could they become the Heaven Chief? Perhaps owner Bu still has more unique ingredients in his gourd. Xianyuan Xiaohui couldn't help but say as he thought of Bu Fong's creative cooking. Creak. The room's door opened one more time. Tong Chung wore a long white robe, a purple gold crown, and a pair of reckless dragon boots. His face was cold as he stepped into the room. He clasped one hand behind his back and played with a round jade bead in his other hand. The jade bead spun in his hand, looking extremely smooth. The young master of the Tong family had arrived. The person who would decide that mortal's fate had arrived. The crowd clamored. When Xianyuan Xiaohui saw Tong Chung, she grinned at him. Facing that smile, Tong Cheng's face twitched. Immediately, bad memories flooded his mind. In the room, Bu Fong had started to cook. Bu Fong didn't knead the dough first. Instead, he started to prepare the stuffing. He took out the papillion dragon claw he had prepared, washed it, and placed it into the black turtle constellation wok. He then added a few slices of mother ginger, half a jar of ice heart jade urn wine, and heavenly mountain spirit spring water. Bu Fong opened his mouth, spitting out a dark gold flame. The flame entered the black turtle constellation wok, burning fiercely. At this moment, many people's attention fell on Bu Fong. No one dared to breathe loudly. What's he doing? Shouldn't he knead the dough and let it ferment first? Many people couldn't help but discuss. However, their discussion didn't affect Bu Fong. He was still meticulously cooking. Taking out 3 blood lobsters, a gold light flashed, and the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in Bu Fong's hand. He spun the knife, twirling it. Shortly after, he cut the blood lobsters and peeled off their blood-red shells. Then he gouged out the crystal-clear blood lobster meat. The 3 pieces of lobster meat were prepared. Placing them on the chopping board, the dragon bone kitchen knife spun. Clatter, clatter. It was as though meteors were falling from the sky. The lobster meat was chopped into meat paste. Bu Fong had 3 kinds of knife skills. One was the basic meteor knife skill, the other was the Overlord 13 blades, and the last one was the cutting immortal style. However, Bu Fong hadn't practiced the cutting immortal style, so he didn't use it. Moreover, the Overlord 13 blades wasn't suitable for chopping such delicate ingredients. Bu Fong's knife skill had shocked many people. However, it was just a shock. The demon frog meat was diced, the papillion meat was diced, and the octopus tentacles were diced. Bu Fong poured these ingredients into a blue and white porcelain bowl. His mind flickered. He took 80 out of the heaven and earth farmland. When 80 appeared, it was still a little dumbfounded. This little fellow had been eating too well in the heaven and earth farmland. It was so fat that it looked like a ball. Its little head turned, and in the end, it landed on Bu Fong's body, as well as the sparkling dragon bone kitchen knife in Bu Fong's hand. Cluck, 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 80 called out. Bu Fong held the kitchen knife, and the corners of his mouth rose with difficulty. He wanted to show a gentle smile. However, when 80 looked at him, its hair stood on end. Cluck, cluck, cluck. 80, who had seen through Bu Fong's intentions, was enraged. Its plump body shook, and it actually broke free from Bu Fong's hand. It jumped onto the floor of the room and started to run. Outside the stage, everyone looked at the 8 treasures chicken that jumped from Bu Fong's hand and ran away. They were all stunned. However, some people's eyes suddenly lit up. In the audience stand, Xinyuan Xiaohui's eyes suddenly lit up. Immortal ingredient, the eyes of many chefs from the aristocratic families also narrowed. An ingredient from the heaven tree? No, it doesn't seem like it. However, its spirit energy is so strong. A top-grade ingredient. It's not an exaggeration to call it an immortal ingredient. Tong Chung played with the jade bead in his hand, and his eyes flashed with light. Immortal ingredient 8 treasures chicken? No wonder you're so confident. Unfortunately, immortal ingredients aren't enough to become Heaven Chief. Heaven Chief isn't that simple. Chapter 974. The fact that Bu Fong could take out an immortal ingredient, the 8 treasure chicken, was out of everyone's expectations. Of course, not everyone recognized that immortal ingredient. However, the people present weren't just ordinary people. 2 of them were the Heaven Chief. As the young master of the Tong family, Tong Chung had seen a lot of things. He had also heard of the 8 treasure chicken. The Heaven Tree was located in the center of the immortal city. Its branches and leaves were luxuriant, and it would absorb the spirit energy of heaven and earth to condense fruits. Precious ingredients would emerge from those fruits, and they were called immortal ingredients. In the past, someone had used the fruits of the Heaven Tree to grow an 8 treasure chicken. However, that 8 treasure chicken was of a higher grade than the one Bu Fong was chasing. The spirit energy it contained was much thicker, and it even contained immortal energy. In the end, 80 couldn't escape the fate of being caught by Bufong. 80 was caught by Bufong by the neck. Its small eyes rolled around, looking at Bufong with teary eyes. Under 80's gaze, Bufong's face remained expressionless. Why are you running? I'm just borrowing your leg. Anyway, it will grow back after a while. Be good. I will send you back to the heaven and earth farmland, and I will ask Nyohan-san to nourish you. Bufong said. 80 was dumbstruck. Why don't you try borrowing my leg? Cluck, cluck, cluck. 80's pitiful squeal rang out. It sounded like a pig being slaughtered. Cluck, cluck, cluck. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun, removing the chicken skin and cutting the lean meat into small pieces. Then, you place them into a blue and white porcelain bowl. The 5 types of spirit beast meat were mixed together, stirring continuously. Gulp, gulp. Inside the black turtle constellation wok, the soup began to boil, appearing milky white. Bufong turned off the heat. He poured the broth from the pot into a small bowl of blue and white porcelain that he had prepared beforehand. The soup inside emitted a milky white radiance. With a thought, Bufong's spirit sea surged as though a spirit beast was roaring. A moment later, Bufong used his mental force to absorb the heat from the air around the bowl. Voila! At a speed visible to the naked eye, the soup in the porcelain bowl became cold, as if it had turned into jelly. The fresh cabbage was washed and chopped into small pieces. Meticulously, it was mixed with the 5 types of spirit beast meat that had been prepared beforehand, and it was stirred continuously. In the process of stirring, Bufong also prepared a lot of seasonings. Half a spoonful of abyssal chili sauce, a spoonful of frost-blazed path understanding brew, sun mother ginger, purple garlic, and other spices were added. Just like that, the filling of the glazed soup dumplings was completed. After the stuffing was done, the next step was to make the dough. He took out the flour and piled it into a small hill. Bufong rolled up the sleeves of his vermilion robe, revealing his slender and fair arms. Whoosh! He poured the frost-blazed path understanding brew into the middle of the flour, causing the top of the small hill to cave in. Then, he used both hands to pile up the flour. After kneading for a while, the flour gradually condensed into a huge ball. What happened next was the key. The onlookers frowned as they watched Bufong cook according to the rules. From the start of the Heaven Chief exam until now, besides his knife skills, which surprised people a little, Bufong didn't do anything special. He wasn't any different from an ordinary special grade chef. Xianyuan Shahui furrowed her brows, feeling a little suspicious. Manager Chen's eyes were cold as he observed Bufong. He was analyzing each of Bufong's moves. The more he analyzed, the more his brows furrowed. With this level of skill, it's impossible for him to become the Heaven Chief. What is this kid doing? Manager Chun let out a sigh and muttered to himself. The people from the aristocratic family squinted, looking a little pensive. Tong Cheng's eyes were still indifferent, but he started to play with the jade bead in his hand. Making a steamed bun, it's not difficult at all. This mortal chef is really making steamed buns, according to the rules. Does he want to give up on the Heaven Chief exam? With this level of skill, he wants to become the Heaven Chief? He's dreaming. I can beat 10 of him. The audience around them had already begun to discuss. Some people even boasted disdainfully. It was true that Bufong's cooking was too simple. There was nothing special about it. The audience discussed animatedly, and their voices gradually became louder. They didn't care whether Bufong would be affected or not. With this level of skill, even if he wasn't affected, he wouldn't be able to become the Heaven Chief. So, even if he was affected, so what? People's hearts were like that. When they felt that you were no longer qualified, they would step on you mercilessly. Boom! A loud explosion interrupted the audience's discussion. Everybody was startled. They lifted their heads, looking at the stove in the middle of the room. All of them opened their mouths wide, as if they felt a trace of disbelief. White flour floated around Bufong's body. Bufong released his formidable mental force. His cultivation base had reached the peak of the divine spirit realm. If he didn't rely on the dragon bone kitchen knife, his mental force could be compared to a 1-star true immortal realm expert. If he used the tool spirits of the god of cooking set, his mental force could reach the level of a 2-star true immortal realm expert. Thus, Bufang's mental force at this moment was extremely terrifying. Vaguely, everyone seemed to see a vast and boundless ocean. Boom! The bandage in Bufang's hand unraveled, and the black and white bandage fluttered around Bufang's body. Then his naked Taotai arm swelled. Terrifying power gathered in his Taotai arm, and it looked like it could shatter heaven and earth. His fist pounded. He smashed it hard on the stove. The faces of Manager Chun and the others twitched. It felt as though the entire room was trembling under this one punch. On the stove, the ball of flour was hit by Bufang, exploding instantly. Wrapped in his mental force, the scattered flour was squeezed back into his body. Bufang's eyes focused. He raised his Taotai arm again and smashed it down again. Even the stove seemed to be trembling. Manager Chen's heart ached. The stove used for the Heaven Chief's test wasn't an ordinary stove. It was an immortal tool. It was a cooking tool grown from the Heaven Tree, and its value was extraordinary. Being beaten violently by Bufang like that, he felt a little heartache. The onlookers, on the other hand, were frightened by Bufang's behavior. What was that mortal chef doing? He had just said that he was cooking according to the rules. What was with this violent behavior? Was he kneading dough? Did he need to be so violent? Bufang's face was solemn. The Tao Ye's roar reverberated unceasingly on his arm. He punched again, shaking the stove. The flour was smashed. With his mental force, the flour gathered again. They were constantly being broken apart and condensed together. This was an action that was repeated over and over again. However, this behavior made the surrounding audience break out in a cold sweat. Could it be that this mortal chef has given up on himself and wants to take revenge on society? Kneading dough? He's smashing the stove. I've never seen anyone knead dough like that. He must have given up on the test. The audience began to discuss in low voices, but their eyes were still fixed on Bufang, who was in the distance. Xianyuan Xiaohui's brows furrowed even tighter. He didn't seem to understand what Bufang was thinking. Since he couldn't figure out, he continued to watch. Boom! Bufang's figure stepped on the void and rose. The flour turned into a ball, spinning in front of Bufang. Bufang held the ball with one hand. The flour was flying everywhere. It was like a hurricane. Bufang's eyes focused. Then, under everyone's watchful eyes, he slapped the ball of powder with his palm. Swish! The ball of flour smashed down at an extremely fast speed and finally hit the stove with a loud bang. The stove shook a little. Bufang raised his Taotai arm, and the lines on it seemed to come to life. Bestial roars resounded. Then, Bufang's figure fell from the sky like a shooting star. Swish! His speed was too fast for people's eyes to follow. Boom! Like a meteor crashing down, the punch smashed onto the stove. At this moment, the stove, which could no longer bear the burden, finally let out a crisp, cracking sound. Manager Chen's heart ached, and he almost cried. His mouth was twitching. This guy was cooking as if he wanted to destroy the kitchen. Was there something wrong with this guy? Did the stove provoke him? The flying flour scattered, revealing Bufang's figure. A sparkling and translucent ball of flour appeared in Bufang's hand. It was as if a wisp of faint energy was circulating around it. The violent kneading method was Bufang's favorite method of kneading dough. The dough kneaded this way would make the flour extremely soft and tender, and it would emit a lustrous luster. After making the buns, Bufang took out the stuffing, placing it aside. The milky white soup that was frozen like jelly was also taken out. Everything was ready. Next, it was time to make the buns. A spoon of stuffing and half a spoon of milky white soup jelly. Bufang's face didn't change. A moment later, his hand moved like a phantom. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, looking at Bufang's action of wrapping the buns in shock. His hand speed was too fast. 1 fold, 10 folds, 100 folds, the densely packed buns appeared on the bun, causing the audience to stare with their eyes wide open. The 1,000 folds wrapping method. On a small bun, there would be 1,000 folds. This required extreme hand speed and control of the thickness of the bun skin. Shortly after, a small, exquisite bun was wrapped. The 1,000 folds seemed to make the bun blossom. It was as exquisite as a work of art, which people couldn't bear to desecrate. Once Bufang was busy, he would focus all of his attention, meticulously carrying it out. Shortly after, all the buns were wrapped. There were only 5 buns in total, and the stuffing was finished. The milky white soup jelly was also used up. The black turtle constellation wok was ready. With a thought, a steamer appeared in the wok. Swish, then, he poured in the cool, heavenly mountain spirit spring water. He was ready to steam the buns. When the audience saw this set of smooth movements, they all gulped down a mouthful of saliva. At this moment, they seemed to realize that Bufang's buns were a little different. However, they couldn't tell what was different. The heaven and earth obsidian flame was burning, and the heavenly mountain spirit spring water in the black turtle constellation wok was boiling. White steam began to rise from the ground. Bufang clasped his hands, standing at his spot. He closed his eyes, and his mental force gushed out, covering the steamer. The next part was the most important part. If Bufang wanted to condense immortal energy, he had to extract the source energy from the ingredients. The audience watched with rapt attention. They looked at Bufang, who was standing quietly, then at the clear sky above Bufang's head. Then, they looked at each other and let out long sighs. He didn't even trigger the lightning punishment. Indeed, this mortal was lucky the last time. I can't believe this dish can't even trigger the lightning punishment. I could do it too. The audience discussed again. The results seemed to be settled. However, the faces of Xianyuan Xiaohui and the others became more solemn. Tongcheng stopped playing with the jade bead. His face was so solemn that it looked like water was about to drip out of it. The mental force displayed by Bufang made it hard for him to breathe. How could that mortal's mental force be so strong? Manager Chen couldn't help but arch his brows, and his mouth twitched. Mu Luer smiled, but her eyes were surprised when she looked at Bufang. "Brother, what's the situation? There's no lightning punishment. Is Bufang going to fail?" Xianyuan Xian didn't understand the situation, so he lowered his voice and asked Xianyuan Xiaohui, who was sitting next to him. Xianyuan Xiaohui looked at Bufang, who clasped his hands behind his back and closed his eyes. Her mouth twitched. "If I'm not wrong, he's going to succeed? Succeed?" Xianyuan Xian was bewildered. Xianyuan Xiaohui's voice faded away. Black clouds instantly rolled over from the sky. In an instant, they enveloped the entire sky, causing it to darken in an instant. Rumble! A thunderclap rang out, and the thunder dragon surged out of the clouds. The lightning punishment appeared, and the audience was dumbstruck. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.